appreciate everyone coming. I know that coming to these training sessions and taking a full day off from your guys' work is sometimes not ideal for you, and we appreciate you taking the time out to. We'll go through the system today, and you guys actually hopefully get something out of this class. If there's certain things that we don't cover today, feel free to grab me or speak up in this class. Just remember that all of you are new to this Envision and Enforce, so all of you have not, none of you have had this for a long period of time. So your questions is probably a question someone else has in the group too, so don't feel like, oh, I don't want to say that because that's a dumb question. That's probably not the case in this class because this is one of the first training classes we've had for the Envision N4. So any questions out here are going to be well warranted. So again, my name's Cordy Ernst. I've been with Woodman Controls for 20 years now. And in that 20 years, I've wore a lot of different hats in this company. So I've done everything from installation is where I started out, installing my controllers, and worked my way up from engineering, programming, done some sales, project management to where I am now. So I get the luxury of being able to do the training with you guys on almost all of them. So I see I've had many of you for maybe 2 to 3 classes. So some of the material we're going to cover is going to be redundant from what you've had before, so bear with us. We have to make sure we get everyone up to speed, but then after that we start rolling into some stuff you guys have never seen before. So I'd like to start out with kind of going around the room, get an introduction from you and what experience you have with the system. And we can just start here with Mike.
Okay, I'm Mike Getterman, Spencer, Iowa, work for Clay County. With this system, more or less, about 3 months with the one that I got right now.
Jeremy, Clay County, I work with both these guys. We just, our jail, we did an integration with Woodman on a Mitsubishi DRS system.
Dave Jacker, Clay County. This is 3rd generation?
3rd, yes.
For me.
You've been through 3 of our
Yeah. So
3 of our systems.
Started off with Spencer Schools with generation 1, and then moved to the county. I got 2 at the courthouse.
AX and
Yeah, so that's gonna.
loyal customer. Loyal customer.
David Shea with Kent Dodge. Review's got a bunch of stuff too, and a bunch of buildings, and Woodman's in a bunch of them, so we're happy with them.
And if we're not, we go ahead and talk. After the class. We don't want to taint the whole group.
Yeah, Scott Rep, I'm with Camp Dodge also. Yeah, we've had it about this Envision about a few months now.
Yeah.
It's a little different, but kind of the same too.
Kobe Higgins, Camp Dodge as well. Just same thing, a couple months experience as far as local since we've had it. So
Ryan Glennon, Public Schools, about 2 years.
And you've had a migration from an older system to a newer one. And,
Yep.
and a lot of you are in the same boat here, so that's where I was saying is a lot of you have been loyal customers for many years, and this is the migration path that we've taken on. Some of you are brand new or don't even have it installed yet, so bear with us and we'll explain some stuff, and a lot of this will make a lot of sense when it's actually installed. It gives you a good basis to start with. Sorry.
My name is Travis Van Wielden, and I'm with Pell Schools as well. And I still use it. Been using this for 6 months on and off. And we just got this Envision like a month ago, maybe.
Ryan Deshadas, Pell Schools as well, same as Travis there.
My name's Mike Brugg, Health Schools. Same thing.
My name's Steve Bank, and I'm with Deco. We're an advanced pharmaceutical manufacturer. We've had Envision for about a little over a year, and we're slowly integrating the plant over to it. We're not switching all at once. We're just as we start hitting the end of their life, we're changing over a couple units at a time.
And that's the best way to handle these things too, is there's no reason sometimes to jump straight in. It's like slow migration paths, and it's cost effective, and one gives you the ability to be up to speed on the system as you go.
So Ryan Jones, Air Guard Base. Woodman was just awarded the contract to upgrade our EDC system, so we have no idea what we're getting into.
All right, guys, so let's do some work with these guys. Really bragging on my No problems, no concerns.
Gerald Eilers out of the Iowa Guard. More experience on the Generation 1 stuff from previous vendor.
Yeah.
And
So,
similar to
R2?
Java based to this.
Was it R2 on your old stuff?
No, we never had R2.
No tritium or anything at all?
No. Well, yeah, there's tritium out there,
Yep.
but it's, it's Niagara 4, but it's the Java base.
Oh, okay, so AX.
AX.
Okay, so you were no R2, you went straight AX, and now
Plus,
this is
plus still running a lot of signal out there on the ASD.
Barbara Coleman.
Doug Jewell, Air Guard, same thing. Never touched your stuff.
Joe Munch, I'm with Woodman, kind of run the sales side of things, so I'm just here for moral support.
And it will be needed greatly. Again, for the class today, kind of what we got set up in here is we're going to we'll go through kind of an introduction of Woodman, since as we've heard, we have some individuals who've never don't know anything about Woodman, so I need to introduce them. And again, a lot of the stuff that we covered in some of our previous classes, you're going to hear a little bit of it, but then we start migrating into the stuff we're going to do. Again, we're going to go over some of the, just the product, the controller level. We'll show you some of the new controllers out there. Some of you do not have any of the new controllers, the equipped controllers, so we're going to go through that as well. Some of you do, which is why we're covering it. And then we're going to kind of go through the Niagara, the boss controllers, which is pretty much the tritium front end on there. We'll touch on the Envysion software, and then launch, and then we'll roll right into the graphic interfaces and stuff like that. And then at any time, we'll have questions at the end. And if you guys want us to pull up your buildings or do anything, our office is just a couple buildings down. We can walk over there, get in with any of the sales or any of the engineers or any of that stuff, or we can just sit in here and go through any of your buildings. So again, if you have any questions pertaining to your building, feel free to bring them up. But if you want me to pull up your building, and it's just stay after, and we'll go through that stuff. And if I get a mass of you coming up to me and want to do that, then I might bring you over to our other office, and I can help some of the software engineers and stuff help me with the questions you might have. So with that, we'll kind of get started. Kind of just a history of Woodman, where it all started. Woodman Woodman Controls is actually Woodman Electric. So if you see any of our sales records or anything like that, it'll say Woodman Electric. We started out as an electrical company. 1946, Walter Woodman started Woodman Electric on Fort Dodge, Iowa. That's where the four owners of us are all on Fort Dodge as well. That's where our company started. Fort Dodge it was and it still is a big industrial town, which was the need. We were doing very successful in electrical because we did a lot with Hormel's out there, Friskies, Fort Dodge Animal Health, Tate and Lyle's, Coke plants. Those type of applications is where we really cut our teeth on. In 1981, Jim Munch purchased Woodman Electric. Jim is an electrical engineer. I had the opportunity to buy a company from Walter Woodman. So in 1981, Jim Munch purchased Woodman Electric and assumed ownership at that time. In 1985, Woodman Controls did its first controls installation, and it was called a Global Union Project. The company that did the controls portion of it was out of Minnesota, and it's called ProTech. And ProTech was a Stafa dealer, which is a brand of controls that we carried for numerous years, which retired. It got bought by Siemens and got dismantled after that. And so that was our first job that we did with the controls contractor, and it was just strictly install. In 1991, we got asked by ProTech, says, you know, we're traveling from Minneapolis down here into Fort Dodge and that region so much that we'd like to see if maybe you guys would be willing to want to start your own branch up. And so what happened is that Stafa, a lot of controls companies and stuff like that in their product line, they do it by sections. Like you have the state of Iowa, you have the state of Minnesota, and that's kind of the way that scenario was with Stafa, is that Minnesota ProTech was being taken care of the state up in that region. So they asked us to be the region in Iowa to carry the state line. So we agreed to do that. We were doing so much troubleshooting for them on the phone and going out there and doing work for them, we decided that that was the best option. So in 1991, Woodman Controls was formed under Woodman Electric. And in 2000, Jim Munch was getting ready to kind of step out and look for retirement options. So that's when the buyout of the partnership started with me and Steve. And in the years to follow, two others came on, Joe Munch and Ryan Fleury. So there's four owners for the company. But the partnership buyout started in year 2000. And in 2002, Woodman Electric, we decided that we were not making as much money in the electrical division, and we were making more money in the controls division. So we stopped our electrical division and focused strictly on controls. We sold all of our product and all that stuff to one of the other employees, and he started his own independent company called Vantage Electric in Fort Dodge, if you've ever been in that area. In 2003 then, I moved down to Des Moines and started doing work because we purchased the agreements to take over another controls company that went out of business, which was Controls LC. Controls LC was another state dealer, so they ended up putting 2 state dealers in the same area, Iowa. We won, we were victorious in that one. So well, what they did is they had quite a few contracts in the Des Moines area. And what our agreement was is like, okay, you can buy a lot of the controls division and we'll assume all these projects for you. Because before we were staying up in Fort Dodge full time, predominantly a majority of our work was done at Fort Dodge Animal Health, where we did pharmaceutical facilities, clean rooms. That's all we used to do. And they kept us busy enough with 2 or 3 guys that we didn't have to worry about traveling too much. We were doing okay at that point, but then we got this opportunity, and that brought us down to Des Moines. So in 2003, I came to Des Moines. Joe, you came.
Oh,
So I was a lone wolf.
when did I start?
I was a lone wolf for about a year and a half. And then Joe came down and he started doing sales, and then we just started blossoming in the Des Moines market. We still have a presence in Fort Dodge. We have an office there still. So we still have employees in Fort Dodge. And down here is predominantly where a majority of our staffing is at. And then in 2014, the partnership was completed. Jim had stepped away. From the 2000 on, we already had assumed our roles in the ownership of the company, and pretty much he was kind of our backing at that point, but we were managing the day-to-day operations of the business starting from 2000 through there. But the financial portion was taken care of in 2014. And the great thing about that was Jim being on board is one, that's Joe's dad, obviously, if you didn't put the 2 and 2 together. But he's a great businessman, and for us, as coming up in the industry, is that we knew the controls very well, we're good at that, but the business side is we needed the systems. He helped us out, get us on the right path, and make sure that we were stable during that whole process, and we're grateful for that. So, who's Whitman Controls? We're an independent controls contractor. We are not owned by a large corporation, such as like when you look at a Johnson or a Siemens or any of those type of companies. We are an independent controls contractor based here in Iowa. All of our employees are from Iowa, and we cover the state of Iowa. We're factory partnered with Distech Controls, which is our control line you'll see. It's on the majority of your systems out there. Belimo, that's our independent line that we carry with our sensors and all kinds of components like that. Tritium, so obviously we'll talk about this when we're talking about the BOSS controllers, or if you're used to Jaces or whatever you're talking about, all the same thing. There's a Tritium controller line. And then Enlight is our lighting. We're partnering up a Acuity lighting system. I don't know if any of you have Enlight in your systems. Okay. Very big lighting company. They purchased Distech, the product line, which kind of put us in line with them. So we do our lighting with Enlight as well, and we're factory trained on all those devices. In addition to ABB, Danfoss, and all them, but I didn't want to start going out with this all stuff we were trained, so I just stuck with kind of core what we're dealing with. So like I said, when I talk about an independent controls contractor, we have 4 owners of the company. We're driven by our customers. We don't have, if Chicago or New York or Los Angeles are having a great year, that money filters down to us to keep us afloat. That's not the case with us as an independent controls contractor. We're dependent on you guys to be able to, we get a good product to you guys. In turn, you continue to work with us. So that's the big thing that when we talk about independent controls contractor with us. We run independently ran teams working as one. Joe runs the sales division. He seems really happy with that one.
So the way we do it is we break it up into territories. We got a guy for eastern Iowa, we have a rep for northern Iowa, and then a guy for southern Iowa, which actually covers Des Moines area and south. So depending on where you're from, you might see somebody different than other people. So, but all the pricing comes through the sales department. Our goal is to go out there and see customers, promote maintenance, and sell projects, find projects. So
they're your first line of defense. When you have projects that are coming up, typically you're gonna run into one of them. If you have a new project that's coming up, there's some questions on that. Other than our service division, which get a lot of calls from a lot of you guys, these are usually your first line of defense on that one. Our next is engineering, and it's ran by Ryan Flaherty, and that's engineering and software. They create all of our drawings, all of our engineering, our O&Ms, our as-built, everything like that. They create the standards for our software and for engineering. That's one of the big things that we really emphasized in the last 6 years, is that we try to standardize on everything we have. The only way we can do these classes is if we try to keep consistent with everything we put in there. That's from the drawings to the graphics to everything. We don't have a guy sitting on a bucket in the mechanical room creating all these graphics, even though I was in there the other day.
Sitting on a bucket.
Sitting on a bucket, I was. But we're trying to make sure that when we have some consistency going through there. So when you look at our graphics and stuff like that, I can talk to Pell Schools, or I can talk to Clay County, or Camp Dodge, and there's some consistency with there. The borders look the same. A lot of our graphics are the same. The way we do our naming is going to be the same. So we're really working on being consistent format throughout the whole system. Again, everything is in-house, so our engineering, we take care of all of ourselves. All of our graphics and everything are created. We create all of our own graphics, either that be per the spec or that's design build. So if any one of them is done here, we don't farm anything out. We don't talk about any aspect of our company. The only thing that we farm out is our installers. And we have a group of about, I'd say about 10 installers throughout the state of Iowa that do our installs for us. But other than that, we take care of everything in-house. But we do have the ability, like I said before, if we have a problem with our actual product line, we can reach out to Vantage Controls and they can help us support it that way. But otherwise, completely independent. Field operations, I take care of the field guys, so projects, startup technicians, work with service, make sure they're doing what they're supposed to, and hopefully they are. You guys all know those guys. For ours, the project managers are installed in every aspect of the job, from the beginning to the end. They're the main point of contact on your project, so many of you have probably had one key project manager into your job, which is what we're trying to really strive for. So when we get on site with you guys, we're trying to give you a Dave Winger, and he's with you the whole time, or Jason Vance, who's with you the whole time, or, well, Bailey passed away, so we have one of our technicians that's been with us for years. He had been with Clay County for a long time, he just passed away. But we're trying to keep that consistency going with you guys the whole way, and that's from the service and from the project management side of it. And service is ran by Jordan Becker. He runs the service. We have 3 other service guys, or 2 other service guys that are in there. They do the online PMs, controller replacements, retrofits for our existing service customers. So if you have a PM with us already, they do all the retrofits because they're more familiar with the system as well. One thing on our service that we try to strive for is 24-hour contact you. So if you call on our line, that we're getting a hold of you within 24 hours. And if you're not, we have a package in the background and we'll show you that. It goes out there and the analytics tells us, hey, if you called this customer and you got to them within 24 hours, that's one of our big things we're really trying to strive for. The other thing is that all controller replacements, if you have a controller replacement that's out there, we're trying to, our goal is 14 days from the beginning of the design to the end of the training. That's 14 days that we do. So that's kind of some of the guidelines we have within the service department. And online support with the analytics tool through our software, or through our service division. So we'll go through some of that stuff here a little bit later. And then the business side of it, Steve Heenan, most of you know him. He takes care of day-to-day operations, financial, HR. I made it sound really kind of boring for you, so he's not been here, so we'll kind of move on with that. Well, yeah, they kind of make fun because me and Steve kind of have like a husband-wife relationship. We've been together for like 20 years at the company, so it kind of, I can gouge at him a little harder than most of the other guys. So what makes us different? We have projects from cradle to the grave, like we said before. We're not, hey, I got a specialist up in Chicago, so I'm going to send all this programming and stuff to them. We take care of it all here, except for, like we said, the install. So we really take pride in that we're a controls contractor too. We're not a mechanical trying to do controls, or we're not an electrical trying to do controls. Our main focus is controls, which puts us in a good light, we feel, because I'm not stepping on a mechanical's toes. I'm not stepping on an electrician's toes or any of that stuff. My sole job is controls it. And I have a problem with a piece of equipment, I hand it over to the individual that does your mechanic. They're the ones that you have the support and faith in. I give them that work. I only discovered the controls portion of it, so that's what we stick with, and we've always been that way. Ongoing customer training. So we do, geez, Joe, how long do you think? About 7 years we've been doing these training classes?
Yeah, usually, we used to do them 4 times a year maybe.
So we still
Kind of
do
cut it back to 2 or 4,
Yeah, we'll
just
do-
depending on the year.
2 to 4, depending on the request of the customers. This class is the very first one we put together for the Envysion and N4, so it's a little rough. Blame Joe, he's the one who said it. But no, we put these 3 classes on, and we do this for the reason is that we know that there's turnover in companies, and we know that there's new staff always coming on board because of the growth of your companies. And the other is, these systems are complicated, they're not easy, so there's no point in that. I throw a system out there and I give you the taillight special where I put it in and I'm out of there, you never hear from me again. We want you to invest in this product that we're putting out there. We're investing in you guys, we want you to invest in the product we put out there. If we train you, you're gonna use the product more, correct? You're gonna have a little faith in it, you're gonna feel more comfortable with it. That's the driving force for us doing free customer training for you guys all the time. And again, that's just not the 4 sessions or 2 sessions we do a year. We'll also come out to your sites if you have special needs, and we'll put it on online training for you at your facility as well. So, we get a lot of crap about doing free training, but hey, we run our business the way we need to. Right? So we give it to you for free, we feel it's needed. We get good turnouts like this, I think it's worth it. We're an open system, we have no license restriction, there are no software hostage tactics. That's big for us is that everyone says they're open to some extent, right? They're always saying, well, I controllers, you can talk, well, you have to have this tool or this dongle to be able to do it, or things like that. Every part of the software that we're going to discuss is free. There is no special license for it, don't need anything for it. The GFX we're going to talk about to program the controllers, all is embedded on the network manager, or BOSS, which is completely free. You can also get it on your computer. So the Envysion software to be able to do the graphics, embedded on the BOSS, free, doesn't do anything, it's all accessible from the web. So that's one big thing, and that's where we always take it from the terms of the customer chooses us because we're better, not because they have to. And that's the one thing that will emphasize to you, and if you've been to enough of these training classes, you're going to hear my soapbox speech right now, right? Is that if we're not doing our job, get us out of there, right? If we're not performing, that system can be taken over by anyone that knows how to do controls if they're good. They can come in there, pull the points out, and start working it, or actually start working right from the front end of it. So that's the emphasis that we have to use. Like, if we're not doing our job, I don't want you to feel like you put a product out there, and I put it in there, and it's like, oh, I got the next one guaranteed because you got my product in there. I got the next job. No, I have to keep working for you guys. Service. I have to keep making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to all the time. We stumble, just like everyone, but we're at least open the chains of communication with you and make sure that we're doing what we're needing to do with you. If not, we're working towards doing that for you. And that's the whole key emphasis we have too, is that we work for you. When you were saying, hey, it's hard to be a boss, I was like, I have all kinds of people who I have to listen to, and I work for all of you. So does Joe. So does every one of our technicians, and they need to understand that. And that's a key thing, is that we need to not just come into these projects with the assumption that, oh, well, we need to do it this way. We need to listen to your needs, and we try to really do that. So when we do the graphics and all that stuff, if we're ever in training with you, you'll always hear us saying, well, if you don't like that, we'll make these changes. And that's the key to us working with you guys, is making sure that we're meeting the needs for you guys, doing what we're supposed to. And again, you're all my bosses, so when I screw up, I expect you to get on me. But hopefully we do good for you and we get continued revenue. What we're talking about here, we have customers in here that have been with us for 3 generations of product lines. That's amazing. You know, when we go from R2 to AX to now Envysion, that's what we want. We want to be able to be the ones that are with your system from the beginning to the end as well. Because of all the trades that you're out there with, typically, construction companies go, electricians go, mechanicals go, but the one trade that, and the one companies that usually, we do what we're supposed to, stay with you for the longest period of time, if you think about it, is controls. They're usually in systems for quite a while. And That's our big emphasis with our companies that we tell the guys. All right, so I got a few tools that we're talking about. Some of you use them, some of you don't. And have any of you gone and used our app? By chance? Never used it? So if you guys Google or Apple, this app we have on there, it's obviously free. I'll pull it up here on my phone. So if you go to the App Store, you'll see there's that little Woodman WCC, go on there for Woodman Controls Company app. You click on that, and I would suggest that you load it because I will go through some of the features we have on here. One is just our contact information on there, so it's got our phone numbers, our location, everything like that. The next we have on there is our service request. So if you have any requests that you need for us, this is the best way to do it. When you call our technicians, remember, they're out on job sites and they're working on other stuff, and the problem that happens is that, hey, I called you. Well, if you're like me, I forget, I get sidetracked, and I don't have it written down. By putting in a service request here, you'll immediately get into our alarm queue, which what happens is, you'll put up the information, what company you're with. First name, last name.
Just send out a bogus work order.
Should I do it? To George. Yeah. So I got a guy out training in Las Vegas. He's probably a slot.
Tell them to just look at it.
Just look at it.
George is a good.
Just look at it.
Well, if you got it, even go ahead and send it to George. We'll see. We'll make sure he sends something back to you. Put your email.
Just look at it. Just look at it.
I had him rolling one day up there, God. George is awesome, we love George.
That's good. Does the surface call type you have HVAC?
Just look at it.
Yeah, okay.
All of a sudden,
Just
just
call.
gonna get 10 requests right away.
Oh, yeah. That's more or less what I can do. Service location, again, you put where you're at, all this information. The reason we ask for all this information is if you've been getting any of our work orders lately, we also have a new software that when you get work orders, it puts your email address, location of your facility, all that stuff. So we have a running total where we were just talking about before, we're emphasizing trying to get a 14-day turnaround on all project or 24 hours to give you guys a call back. I do not ever want to hear any of our guys saying, well, it took 4 days to get a call back from this service. That's BS. We don't want that. And this gives us the ability to have the software in here to be able to, like, when this comes through, which I'm going to send, we'll send the request. This puts it in our software, so it comes to the 4 owners of us. It also goes out to our service division, so they're going to be able to get that in there to respond to that immediately within 24 hours on that one. Again, if you put the calls in, I can't guarantee that they're going to give you a call right back because they're going to get sidetracked and they're always working on jobs. And I do not have anyone that just sits in this office and fields phone calls all day long. It just is not how we operate. They're all out in the field working every day, and they get to you when they can. So we want to make sure that you got through the process of having this information so we can verify that. Joe can be like, hey, did you get a hold of Contractor? They called, and we got the email response, and they didn't want to follow up with them. Or I call out to any one of the sales guys and say, hey, sales, did you follow up on that quote from them? We see that there's a request to do it. So we really ask that you guys really use this tool because it, for us, what am I doing? Okay.
Yeah, see.
Yeah.
He would know exactly what he's saying that he sent that.
Yeah. All right, so the other one is sales request. Joe, when you get these that come through,
Yeah, so when these come up, we slot them, we have our own tracking system through our CRM. We get it logged, and then weekly we go through and make sure that we don't miss a quote or something like that, so. As they come up, we do, whatever territory it ends up in, that salesperson is responsible for at least contacting you and and verifying that, hey, is this what you're looking for? Because sometimes when we call in, we discover it's a different problem than what was actually sent in. So we'd like to contact you, figure out exactly what you need, and send you a quote, or just order the part or whatever it may be, so.
Let's go ahead.
So sales, service, pretty cut and dry, right? Put your information in, they're gonna get to you immediately within 24 hours, and it's in, put it in our queue so we can follow up with it. It also helps us, when we have the analytics, we can go out there and see how many requests for service that you're putting out there, so we can find out, like, wow, we've got some major problems going on with this place. Why are we getting so many requests? We have an analytics program that goes through every month with us and tells us who's fielding the most amount of calls from us, and then that's something we gotta find, is like, do we got a really major problem out here? Or do we need to give them more training, or what do we gotta do with them? So it's not just the information that you're giving to our guys, it's the information we're harvesting back from them to be able to tell us, okay, we got a problem out here. The other is parts order. You can order your parts directly from here. This is a big one too, because a lot of times we just get calls like, hey, I got a sensor that went bad. Okay, what sensor? I don't know. What do you got out there? We're gonna go through the drawings to show you how to be able to find the part, but you can go in there once you found the part, you can go in there, put your company name again before. If you have a PO that's associated with it, put it immediately on this one. If it's an emergency, call ASAP or need help. Again, this software alerts us that says we need to be contacting them immediately at that point, within the 24 hours. You can also put in there,
We don't know exactly what we need.
well, if you don't know your need, that's what we're gonna talk about, like when we go through the control drawings, how to find that part number so you have the exact replacement. Because the majority of you are facility directors and you're taking care of the buildings yourself. And you're gonna want the exact part that I can pull out, put back in. And that's what we're looking at for you. So the one way is when we go through the drawings, which is why we go through our control drawings, so you understand how our drawings work and how to be able to order a part directly on here and put that part number there. The other is you can just send a picture of it. When you take a picture, we ask that you use the model, the part number and stuff like that on the device, so we can actually match it up. And then send the pick out. And once you send that, it goes into our system and we'll get it to our administrator and they'll get the part ordered for you. If you don't have a PO issued for you, then we'll send it out for you and then we'll bill you according to the job numbers that we have before we did. So that's the parts. Any questions around using that? And most people in here are using it or most people are not using it? Because if you're not, I would suggest really download it. It does help us out a lot. The other is there's videos on here.
One more thing to add, if you call into the office and someone picks up, like, and I pick up and you guys have a service request, or I just end up putting it in that and it goes through the same thing.
That's a good point.
So it's all the same anyway.
Yeah.
It should be. So like if you call to us, it goes into our service. Now, if you've been getting any of our new, within the last couple of months, if you send a service request to us, you should immediately be getting information that says, hey, your service request has been acknowledged, and it'll send you an email, and then follows up with a technician that's gonna work on it with you, and then follows up at the very end when it's completed. So there's, and some of you are calling us like, why am I getting so many damn emails? Well, and we can work on trying to get that thin down, but we wanna keep you informed to let you know that we are understanding you have a service issue, who you're gonna be dealing with, and kind of just giving you the paths today. So that's a good point. And if you call us, we just put it in the queue as well. On the videos, we have all of the trading videos on here that we have. So as we're gonna go through, you can see that we have all these little YouTube videos. They're 5 to 10 minutes. There's some in there that are an hour. Shows you how to use the system. You know, how do I do the histories extensions? How do I edit in the Envysion Graphics? The things that we're gonna talk about here, some of them are just gonna go right over, right? And this point of this software, or this app, is that you can go in there and you can click on any of them and say, hey, I forgot how I'm supposed to do like command a point on the graphics. You can go right in there and watch that little video while you're working on the system to be able to try to make those changes. How do I do a schedule? I forgot about it. Now we have a user 101 and a user 201, and we'll get into a little more detail of that. The user 101 is all the old AX stuff, things like that of their older generation, and user 201 will be all the Envysion stuff that we're going to talk about today. So you'll see it'll start being broken up a little bit on our website of the different type of versions. But does anyone use the videos? YouTubes, or have you ever?
No.
Come on, guys. I'm trying to help you here.
It's so easy, you don't have it.
Okay, I'll take that one.
It's a great reference for like, for when you forget how to do something. I think that's the best place to go.
I'll use it.
Yeah, it's a great tool to be able to use, Phil. Like videos, that's cool. A little thing is, It's something that, just a little button that I didn't know how you clicked or how did you get to that point. It's just a little bit follow up on that one. Okay, I don't do this all the time, so I apologize. So the videos and stuff like that, they're great to go on there. So that's the Woodman app. And use it, I think use it as a reference, it's a good tool. Our website, has anyone been to our website?
No.
Jeremy? What think you do, man?
He's the same way in our meeting.
I guess. So our, no, I'll just do it from the phone as well. Our website is gonna be revamped here shortly in the next couple of weeks, so.
Oddly enough, none of my buildings have any control systems at all.
Yeah, we probably will.
They probably do.
Well,
It's pretty much the same thing that we were just on.
we're pushing forward.
See, my defense, I was telling these guys, that, like, we have 7 buildings that us 3 guys maintain. And my 2 buildings have extremely simple HVAC systems in them. One building's, we just rent, so we, like, I don't have any automation in my buildings. These guys both do. So,
So you get to tag along with them.
yeah.
Like I say, I won't go into a lot of detail because this is going to get revamped, but some of the key things that are going to stay the same is when we talk about resources, if you can see here, we've got our training calendar on there. We're at the 2nd training class of the year we had on there. Sometimes we do 2, 4, it just depends, like I said, the amount of requests we have on there. But if you ever want to do any of these classes, I don't know how most of us, did anyone just call you guys or email you? Is that how they did it last one, or did you go to the website? I think you got calls. So if you ever have questions in the future, you're bringing on new staff and you want to know when the training dates are, usually after January 1st, we have a new schedule put up there for at least 2 days and we'll add more as needed. So you go under there, under the resources, that'll be where you go under for the training calendar. And again, we were just talking before where we have a user 101 and a user 201. User 101 is going to be all the older systems that we go through. Some of the AX systems you might have in place, and the new stuff will be all of the Envysion Graphics and the HTML graphics and N4 that you have on there. So again, you can see they're very short little videos. They'll be broken out in here of like how to do schedules, how to do alarm overview, so we have those for you. Just utilize those tools. The other thing on here is we'll have new demos that'll be on there. So some of you have never seen the system. Again, I have my air guard out here that we just got a contract awarded to us. There are some we had Grandview that was going to come in here because they're looking at upgrading their new graphics, and Pella just had their graphics in there. Sometimes you need to send this to the superintendent or the CFO or the CEO. They want to see, what am I buying? And so the demo is a good way of being able to give them the demonstration and say, hey, this is where we're going from, this is where we are, this is where we're going to. So it gives them the option to be able to look at from the demo standpoint. The last one is there's a blog. So anything that comes new through the company, so if we have like there for a while, you know, we have the building automation lifestyle, YouTube channel, our new app, so any of the new stuff we have out there goes on our blog. Also what's on there is if, like when we run into all these Java, we have Java still here, no, well, older stuff.
Or so where else is Java?
Hey, no. Yeah, it is. But you still have a new system. When all these Java problems were going on and we had to have these fixes, we put those blog information that says, hey, do this on the Java Chrome to be able to fix the problem. So anything that we have like a mass amount of problems we're seeing, like Chrome decided that they were no longer going to support Java. On our blog, gave the information that says, okay, go to Firefox and install this on
Yeah, because we came in one day, opened it, and it wouldn't work. And I think we had to go to your blog, we downloaded this little tool, and now it's like we have our own little app that we open up that pulls up Java.
Creates its own little browser on there. So those are the little things we'll have on our blog. It'll be things that we're looking for the masses out there that says, okay, we have a problem with our system. We'll direct you to our blog and say, look at our blog, do the step-by-step instructions. If you're still having problems after that, give us a call. We'll come up with anything for you. So that's pretty much on the web portion of it. Let's go. The other one we have on there is Personify, or we'll do the KeyAct one. So a KeyAct one, it's an analytic software that is kind of an a la carte item that goes inside. Has any of our sales guys or service guys talked to you about the KeyAct?
Not yet,
No? Okay, well, let me exit back out of this one. I need about 3 computers here. So the KeyAct, we'll just pull it up right here. This is a analytic package that runs in the background of your system. It's piggybacked onto the automation system. And what it does is it goes out there and it's harvesting all the information on your system, the space temperature, the space set points and things like that. And it's giving you a grade for your building and finding out every day how your building's running. And at the end of the month, it'll give you a report card of it. You can kind of see. Let me pull this up. You can see right here, it goes out there and it does a report card. And so here's an inspection report of a building we just did. It goes out there, it tells you how many of the chilled water devices passed. Meaning, did our discharge air temperature rise when our chilled water valve opened up? Or it tells us how many devices failed on the control system. So it's running in the background telling us we have 2 devices that failed the specific criteria inspection. How many duct static control issues we have. So it's constantly monitoring your building. It's almost a self-check of your building all the time that's running on there. And it monitors every minute, goes through and tracks all the specific points on there. If you had, we're having huge energy demand costs and I want to be able to monitor or pinpoint where that is. Yeah, your histories do a good job about that, but you have to be looking at every one of these different reports to be able to find that. With this KeyAct, it goes out there, does the inspection report, and it'll tell you where you're failing at what time and what's going on. And the cool part about that is it goes down in here, and if you can see, our overall building score is 77. Ideally, we want a building score of 100%. It's just not feasible. There's different factors that come into play. But, building scores around 80, 85 are really key. Average building temperature, been running for a whole month, average building temperature is 70 degrees. High outdoor, so it tells you the difference that you have in the outdoor conditions. So it's not just like it was a constant 70 degrees all the time. So
I'll go back a couple screens where, right there. Like on the bottom two where it says set point selection, you got 154 devices failed.
Yep.
So you click on that, is it going to tell you which devices?
Yep, I'm going to go down the report. Here, I'll keep going down this report. So right here, we talked about 2 devices that failed on there, right at the top. Okay. It tells us that our discharge air temperature more than 3 degrees above the effective discharge air set point. So air handler 1 and makeup air unit 4 failed that test. So we set up the parameters and say in a 10-minute period, did that discharge air temperature rise more than 3 degrees? If it didn't, then it gives us a failure. Now, we go out there and test this and find out that the hot water valve is bad on both the air handler 1 and makeup unit 4. I didn't have to have anyone out there. The system just ripped through the analytics, goes through and finds out those issues.
Or go back through and change your parameters.
Yep. And
again.
that's what it does. It consistently keeps going out and testing things. Where you were talking about the 154.
Right.
Couple of schools, let's say you've got a set point parameter that's in your school guidelines that says, I do not want to be for unoccupied temperatures, I don't want to be any less than 65 and I don't want to be any more than 85. If someone changed those parameters and moved it up to 68, 76, it's going to give you a failure to tell you, oh, these are all the rooms that you have outside of that range that you asked it to be in. So that's why it shows 154. If someone changed the set point from the parameter guidelines that they've set by their district.
So you need to clear that out.
Yeah, we need to find out who changed it, or change the parameter and say, I want your new parameters to be this value. So Marshalltown School District, they're key. They make sure that they have to have their set points exactly at that at every building. And this is the key one. So if it's outside of that range, they're losing money because they're raising their set points to keep it a little warmer in the spaces where they already have those parameters in place that they've established in the school district guidelines. So Just kind of cool little thing on the performance, tells you exactly what rooms are in an issue. And for us, what happens is this is what we go out with our service guys. So instead of the guys on the computer scrolling through every single page, finding what's going on, they take this report immediately, go out there, solve the problems, or you guys too. I mean, a lot of you have your own field guys that can take care of this issues. This report is just reoccurring. The issues get taken off of the list, your score in your building goes up to 80%, and it just keeps moving up from there, knowing that you've gone through and fixed those problems without having to identify all of them.
So where does that software reside? On the J's?
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry, no. It's a totally separate device that just goes into the network. So it resides on your network. It's cloud-based. So we pull all the information out of there. So think of it kind of an integration. We're pulling all the points out of that network manager or...
So cloud-based, so you have to expose the J's to the
Yeah.
internet?
Yeah, that's the one that does. You can put it inside of this facility, and it can run inside of the facility. It just has to be on the network or network capabilities of that. So we have...
So it runs on a server?
Yeah, it's got, they call it a Raspberry Pi. It's a little computer that's out there that runs all that information, and it can harvest hundreds of thousands of points at any point. Yeah, and then like I
So
say,
we don't have that.
no, this is an a la carte item. This is, we don't have anyone in this building that has any of them.
We just got on board with this probably a month ago or so, so it's a new technology.
We put it out on 5 buildings just to sample it, to see what's going on, because we had 2 integrations that were not going great in our standpoints, and they were like, well, we don't know who's going on with it. And we had a controls contractor, a competitor, and our system on there, and we were like, okay, we'll do apples to apples. It'll do this communication protocol, and it'll do our communication protocol, and we'll track it, and we'll see who's staying within the set point parameters and all that. All these values you're seeing here are the values that we put in it to see where it failed. And this is where we came out and said, okay, we have one device with the Distech controls on it that failed. Here's the 20 that failed on the other. And it's not meant to be like, oh, look, we're doing better than you.
It's a shine light.
It's the shine light that says, okay, they integrate, if it's an integration, I'm sorry to say it, but crap in, crap out. You know what I mean? I can't fix some things that are programmed inside the controller and make it look good on pretty graphics that we're going to show you. This shines a light on that kind of scenario.
So that device, does the customer buy that Raspberry Pi device, or do you rent it?
You can buy it. Buy it, and then it's like it's a 1 year, year-to-year lease on it. Where
It's a 3-year commitment. We're working on pricing for that. I guess I would ask you guys, what is that something, if we charge $200-300 a month and we'd send you a monthly report with the results of your facilities, is that something that's worthwhile?
The thing on this is like,
For me, right now at this point in time, yeah, it would be something that would be worthwhile for me.
it's one of those things, is like if I'm on site doing a PM, I'm only getting a snapshot of what's going on at that particular time. And that's the key to this one, is that this takes it from morning to night, and it actually lets us view everything. And it's not just in a week information chunk, it's months or years of information that being able to harvest out there. It'll give you a whole idea of what's going on in the system. And you can see they get more report performance ranking, total devices. How many good devices do I have? How many okay devices? And how many really crappy devices do I have out there? And then you can see right here, it grades it from the worst to the best devices, and it goes out there and tells you. So focusing our attention on what's going on with, Kitchen East has only got a score of 40. So all the ones with a score of 40 to 60 is my primary goal that I work on my facility, is try to get them correctly and up to speed on it. So that's just one of the little tools. Like I say, we're looking at tools to simplify your life, things that can be put on that you don't really have to do much with them. Obviously, there's a financial portion of them, but then you can take this information and within your facility, you can take that and say, okay, hey, let's look at, we're targeting these 3 pieces of equipment here because they're giving us the worst score of all of them. We know that it's the discharge air, we know it's a hot water or a combination of all of them, and you can fix those issues at that point.
You can't do this on like our courthouse computer. That's the system.
Sure, you can put it on anything.
Oh, so we can run that.
This can run on any software. This isn't just anything that we can pull the points on and do an integration on, you can pull it out of. It can reside on any type of network.
Would you get a discount on a package deal?
Talk to him, I'm not a sales guy. I just go in here and show you what he does.
We'll talk.
We'll talk. The other one we got on here, we'll show you, is called Personify. So, someone new Our new Allure thermostats and things like that have Bluetooth built into them. So some of the product we're going to show you has Bluetooth built in them. The cool part about this is this Allure, and it's called Personify. If I click on here, I'll show you a demo on here that we got on here. So we got the thermostats, the new Allure thermostats that are on the new controllers up there have this ability on there where you can go into a room, connect to them, and then you have the ability, so imagine a conference room, this is what we perceive this, and you can use this more than anything, it's on a conference room, and we're in this room, and I wanted to be able to control my temperature right from that one device. So when I connect to the Bluetooth, I can only see that one controller, it gives me the address, connects my Bluetooth directly to it, and then I have the ability to be able to control this up or down from our thermostat with the software. Now this is no more than a Bluetooth app on here that's connected to the HVAC system through the new Eclipse controller. So speed up, slow down the fan, you can also tie the blinds in with it, things like that. So it's not, you're not obviously not going to walk around a whole building and Bluetooth to every single device, but like key things like this, like a conference room or you know, a rec center or you know, a gym or something like that, where you can give the app to the director that's out there and say, hey, you can turn on the lights, raise or dim the lights in the building, or shut them off, whatever you want to do right from the app. Convention centers, things like that, that's a pretty cool app that you don't have to have anything special than the Bluetooth on the controller, which can be enabled and disabled on the Allure thermostat. So a pretty cool little thing on that. I don't know if anyone's ever showed you any of that. The last one we have on there, and this is built onto a majority of your new ones. This is the SelfCheckout program. So in our program, we have, on the controls that you have out there, if you've had anything on 2017 on, you have self-checkout built into it. We created this ourselves because we have startup technicians, and our startup technicians, I don't know if any know Phil or Zach, or have you ran into any of the startup techs? Yep. So their main responsibility is to go out there, get the networks up and go and talk and do all that. This is built onto your platform already. So what you can do is you can do a run of it, push the test button, and what it's going to go through on application device such as VAV boxes, unit vents, cabin unit heaters, things like that. By hitting the test button and running the test, it's going to go out there and it's going to do a simulate, it's going to do an actual test of the heating cooling system on those devices. So our startup technicians, can you imagine starting 100 VAV boxes and going to each one of them up, down. They do that now. And so we were like, God, this seems like, this is really redundant work when they're on, I could have software that does it. So our software division created this checkout, which it'll go through. It'll stroke the valve 100% open, it monitors the discharge air temperature. Strokes the valve 100% closed, monitors the discharge air temperature. Drives the damper open, drives the damper closed, and checks the CFM. It goes through all the scenarios we would typically do on a checkout of a VAV box, and then it'll come back and tell us you have these 3 VAV boxes that have failed. Go look at the heating on those. The cool thing on this is that's great for a startup, but it's also great for you guys, is that one idea situation we've been seeing it a lot on is, I'm coming out of summer and I'm going into winter. And I just turned my boilers on. Self-check. Run the whole thing overnight, gives you a report the next morning. Check this box, and this box.
Now this is something that we don't have either, right?
Well, yours is an integrated system, so remember you got a VRF system, so we have, but if you have VAV boxes or heat pumps or any of those on those, this is built into it already. Remember, these are like, I can't do a complex air handler or chiller plant and stuff like that, but you can do like, there's not too much difference in a heat pump from one heat pump to the next heat pump, and there's not much change in a VAV box from one to the other. And they're usually mass amount of items, right? They're usually not just one or twosies. They're 50 to 100. So, fellow schools, exactly. You got a lot of heat pumps out there. You run the whole test on the heat pumps. Everything, you come back the next day, it tells you exactly which ones to look at, instead of going through to all of them and saying, yeah, just on number 54 of 275 heat pumps in the district. So, that's a cool little tool that we have in there to try to make it easy for you guys to deal with.
For Distech controlled devices, or will it work on other?
It's right now on Distech because it's embedded in the controller, but there's not to say that we can't put it on, like if you have a bunch of VAV. Remember that scenario we just said is we were manually physically driving the hot water valve 100% open, driving it closed, snapshot. Driving the damper 100% open, damper 100% closed, snapshot. And whatever failure comes out of that. So it's a program that's built in there. If you have a specific need, I got a really great software division. They can make about anything work. So any questions on any of the tools that we presented to you? Some of you sounds like you use or you don't use. I think I need to get more of you using the tools from the sound of it, so I'll work on that. And like for that one, the self-checkout, we bury that in the background, but if that's something you want exposed, let us know. We can expose that onto your system. So what brought you to this class? Like we said before, is like many of you have been in some of you went through the R2 with us, some of you have been through the AX. This is bringing you this class. So you have either got a new boss or an Eclipse, new Eclipse controller has been put onto an existing system. So when I say a new boss, this is kind of what you're seeing out there, right? If any, go ahead and hand that. That's replacing the old Jace or old Boss 2, 3, 4, whatever controller line you had out there. That's the replacement of that one. I just pulled up my truck. Yeah, be careful of that one. It's a customer's right here, so it's the one I have in my truck right there. So you've either had that replacement. The other one is that you had one of your controllers has been replaced. These are the new Eclipse controllers that we have out there. So you can see we'll talk about what's so special about these controllers, but anything moving forward in the future, you're typically getting a brand new Eclipse controller out there. I'll start from this way back, and you'll see that these are the controllers that are going out there. So if you've had a new controller that's failed, that's on the existing system, you've probably got a new Eclipse controller put on there, or you've got a new box that's replaced. The other one that I brought there is from 2017 on. You have all new Eclipse controllers and all new Envysion software. So that's what's brought you to this class as well. As from 2017, you have new construction. Which my air guard guys are that scenario, where they don't have anything with us now, but they're going to be moving forward in the future of having a product. The other is, you might have an old existing system and an old Boss controller that has got a new HTML graphic package in there. Who on here loves Java? No. That's why you have this new Envysion software, is you got rid of the Java. That was one of your big things. We ran into, I do not know how many customers, IT departments pitched in to help them get rid of Java and went to the new HTML because they were sick of dealing with it. I want to emphasize that Distech, Tritium, all that did not create Java. Java is a common graphic platform that's used on a lot of different types of devices, and is still being used on a lot of different types of devices out there. So don't beat me up over Java. I don't know. So those are typically the three things that have brought you to this class. Other than you just wanted to keep on the track of going to all of them. Why am I upgrading my system? So, software. Software is just like you have on your systems and your computers and stuff like that. None of you run DOS anymore, right? None of you run Windows Me, Windows 98, right? So, software, it needs to be upgraded. There's patches that go on there that fixes, there's security breaches that get fixed. That's the reason for the software upgrades. Now, you don't need to do that all the time, but we suggest every 6 months there's some look at some sort. Unless you're behind a network, which we're going to talk about an air-gapped network and an open network. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Unless you're standalone and you're not on any network, you definitely need to be thinking about software patches. The system on one of the latest upgrades on Java and Chrome. So if your Java wasn't working, anything like that, that's the reason we went to a lot of these software upgrades, which is why we were talking before. You might have all the old software on it, controllers, everything like that, but you went to the new Envysion software because the old Java wasn't working. A lot of this happened because some of you have time clock functions or something like that, or timekeeping functions that are out there that you can't roll back any further, but the HVAC system has to. One of them's got to go, you know, and so usually that's where we see that, is that I got to keep the Java in for my time card function system. I mean, I don't know what's, is this School Dudes or something that uses that? There's some system out there that we got a lot of calls on them. We just can't roll back our Java anymore. It has to stay up to date with this most current software. And there's a lot of schools that actually have it. Of all the upgrades that happened, this one seems minor. Now, some of you might disagree if you had the Envysion graphic package done. But when you think about it, in the grand scheme of things, how many controllers you have out there in place, and if you try to put a number with that controller replacement, the number is going to blow out far more than it's going to be for after a software upgrade. We figure on average 3 to 5% of your total system cost is the software upgrade would cost on it. So that's just a rough number to put together. And a lot of these numbers I'm giving you, think about these for your budgets when you're putting stuff together. These are kind of some of the numbers we're giving to our customers. The software that's currently retired or updates on there is R2 software. So if you have some old R2, that's retired. If you have MS 1800, which is the old staple line we talked about in here that we used to carry for years. AX is scheduled to retire in 2021 and 2022. That hasn't been permanently in place, but that's the estimated retirement date. Now, when I say retirement date, you guys, you don't need to worry. There's still support that goes along with it. It just means that the sale of it is going to end. And you think about it, they have to do that. You know, we just talked about before, you can't just go out and buy with DOS, right? Some of the software is so out of date that it doesn't make sense to recreate it when the new, more advanced stuff is cheaper. And that's where it goes with our industry. Same with controllers. Why can't I get the old controller I have in there? Well, they don't even make a processor chip that slow anymore. They only go to the big one, and it's cheaper to actually go move up. So you got to think about that in the software. And again, when it goes to retirement, from us, we have a customer that I'm not kidding, I just dealt with the other day, and they've had an old MS 800 that's been there for 19 years. It's still software. It resides, it's standalone all by itself, and I'm just amazed. But hey, sometimes it's hit and miss. Front end updates. Some of the things that you see that are causing you to have to update this system is it begins to start to not respond or lag. You start seeing that it's locking it up all the time. The graphics aren't populating like they used to. And when I talk about the front end upgrades, I'm talking about the boss controller we just sent around. All right, who pocketed it? Yeah. That one's a customer's. When I'm talking about a front end upgrade, I'm talking about this controller. And this controller is, and we'll go into a little bit more detail to it, but this is the controller that you'll see out there, similar to the blue bricks. This is used by a lot of different type of controls companies too, not just Woodman. I'm sure you've seen a similar one like this out in your facilities if you have another. I know you guys are talking about you have AX, so you would see something close to this one that's out there. But obviously it wasn't Woodman, right? Just one?
Just one, all the rest of them black cabinets.
With the J403s.
464.
464s?
Yeah.
Same, still tritium. So you'll see that, that's what I'm talking about when I say front end updates is on there. We're talking about the boss controllers or JACEs, however you call them. They stop responding, you're having to update them, you're losing memory on them, the heartbeat stays on all the time. That's the kind of stuff you typically start seeing when they start to front end fail. Or the manufacturer has deemed the controller end of life cycle. And that, again, that's out of our control. And what that means is the scenario is where they're retiring it. I'm not going to sell it anymore. I'll support it. Usually they support them like 5 years after the retirement date. Then after that, it's kind of find someone who can work on them. Which again, we have people that have been trained from the old R2 systems all the way up to now. So we're pretty versed in all those systems. And when we put these in here, that's kind of the theme that we always want to, we want to be able to make sure our migration paths are forward and backwards compatible. So if we put anything in there, I need to make sure that the old Stafa controllers that I put in 22 years ago are still talking to the new front end controllers. And that's part of our emphasis is that you invest a lot of money in these systems. How heartbreaking is it financially to say, well, guess what? This controller is no longer viable. You have to tear all 28 of them out and put them on there. Our standpoint is, yeah, we'd love that. Don't get us wrong, but it doesn't make a lot of sense financially. So as a controller fails, we need to make sure that forward and backwards compatibility is in place, that old controllers can reside on new networks. New controllers reside side by side, and you don't know the difference on them. Typically, front-end controller systems, they're usually about 5 to 50%. All the controllers that we have in the system, this is by far the most expensive one. And it accounts for typically 5 to 15% of the total system cost. It's got a lot going on in it. And so that's the reason why it's so expensive on there. The ones that are retired right now is if you have a Boss 2, a Boss 3, Boss 6, Boss 7, or R2, or the J's. I didn't even bring the J's up in there just because I thought that was kind of, they are all retired. These are all currently retired controllers out there right now. And some of them are, you know, we were still putting Boss 6s and 7s up into about a couple years ago, 2 years ago. So, but there's a reason why they move forward, and we'll show you some of the advantages of them. Lifespan of them, typically 3 to 7 years. That's give and take too. I mean, you have some that crap out of the box after 2 years of lightning damage. It just depends on the surroundings. You have some, like I said, that one, or we've got 22 years and it's still going. I'm like, I'm babies. Field level controllers. Well, so we handed out those controllers. That's the devices that are on your VAV boxes, your heat pumps. Those are the actual ones that are out there controlling all of the components out there. Typical situation with them is they'll stop communicating or they'll stop actually controlling at the level. So I had some old staple controllers 2 weeks ago on a job where the heat pump stopped failing, and they just wouldn't even start processing. We had to go in through the Envysion N4 software and start writing links to it to do the function of the controller to get them by for now. So the controller was just sitting there, it's really just a dumb I/O now. But that's the stuff you start seeing is that the function inside of them, the brains go away. And the way we got around it was we were writing stuff in the background doing what the controller should have been doing to enable the compressor, enable the reversing valve. So you'll start seeing that happen on the controllers. Another thing is the manufacturers deem the controller end of life cycle. Again, that's them making the decision. They have a new product line in there. They can't get the components. There's a variety of different things that leads to that. These upgrades account for 80% of your total system. So these are the big ones. When you start losing these, and if you were going to do a whole controller replacement, this is where a majority of your money is being spent.
Did you do a temporary patch while we're waiting for replacement?
On some of them, they just die. You know, typically the thing you start seeing on them is they just go into a comm failure, and they don't talk at all in the system. I mean, we got lucky on these old staple ones. Those things don't work. I mean, they don't die. But, you know, we'll work around that stuff. We understand you all have budgets, and you all have money that you have to allocate for certain parts of your building, and sometimes the HVAC is not one of them. If we can limp it by for a little bit, we're definitely going to work with you on that. So if you had a situation like this school did, we know what their financial status is. We're going to work with them. Lifespan of these controllers, systems retired right now are Predators, Raptors, and the State Controllers. Those are the ones that are retired currently at this moment. Lifespan on these controllers is typically 10 to 12 years, and again, many of these we have seen go 20 plus. Just depends on what's going on. So when we talk about the field level controllers, we're talking about the VAV, central plant, etc., account for 80% of the entire cost. The migration path for us in the future, moving forward on any controllers that you have out there, is going to be the Eclipse controller. And that's the ones that we have right here. Thank you. So as the controller fails, you will be putting in a replacement one, which is the Eclipse controllers in the future. They'll do long, or they'll do backnet, IP, and they'll take the replacement, and we usually set it up for we start working on a brand new network at that point. The reason is that is we're trying to get your building future-proofed. The 2-wire device days are kind of over. They're moving towards the high-speed IP networks, and that's the way we need to be moving forward. And you're going to want to in the future as well.
Just like what we put on, or?
This would be what you put in, like, instead of like one of the new VAV boxes. If you had a VAV box that failed, and it was an old lawn or an old backnet controller, this is what would go in place with it. And then a new Cat 5 would be pulled out there, and then we'd start a brand new network from there. On the graphics side, you wouldn't know any difference, but moving forward, we put them on those controllers. So when I'm talking about controllers, I'm going to talk about 2 different types of controllers. One's a programmable controller, and the other is a configurable controller. The programmable controller means we can do everything in that device. It is not just set up to be just a VAV box. I can also set this up to do cavity heaters on the side, and I can do electric wall heat on there. It's just not isolated to one certain component. I can set up to program a variety of different type of components like that. The other thing on there is that we have limited memory on these ones for local and trending, so you have the ability to pull trending information out of these, alarming information, things like that out of these controllers. The new ones, well, we're going to talk about. There's separate software that's used to program these ones. So when we're talking about the software hostage information, you know, GFX is software that you guys can program these controllers. And we'll work with you on learning how to program these controllers. If you guys have the interest in learning to do that, we have a separate class we've set up before for people who want to learn to program controllers themselves to help save on some cost for them and to just get more proficient on them. We have quite a few customers that do all of it. They'll download the controller, they'll do every part of it on there. We train them how to do that. And again, we want to get away from the man behind the curtain that does all the work and give you guys the ability to do that kind of work. And so we give them that ability but you have to have software to do it, which is free software to be able to do that programming. Many different levels of version, different controllers. These controls will do anything from 16 level to 16 input-output controllers to, here's a big one. This controller right here will expand out, and this one controller can do up to 360 points. That's a huge controller. And that's ideal because you get into the central plant, and that you don't want controllers going from controller level to controller level. If you keep everything contained into one controller, you're passing all the same information within the same one controller, and you're not worried about having to have a breakdown in one controller that had the chilled water temperature, and now this controller needs the chilled water temperature, so you can see where the downfall is at. A 360-point controller is about as big as you're going to find. So that's the cool part on those ones. And then they can do any type of programming sequence that we need on there, whether it be very small side loop to very complex, complicated program for clean room applications, pharmaceutical, anything like that. So very configurable. Compared to what we had before, which is why we kind of got away from our stateful line and those lines, is because all they had to offer for us was a configurable controller. Could you imagine having we had to have 5 different types of heat pump controllers, we had to have 6 different types of VAV controllers. So the cost of the controllers was through the roof because we had to have one stock for every single type of device. We had to do a direct replacement for the controller. So that's the big problem with we don't use configurable controllers anymore. There's still a lot of companies that use them. You know, that's good for them. It didn't work for us because we got one controller that can go solve about 90% of our applications by just dumping a program in there and it'll act exactly like a configurable controller. Typically, there's no local memory in them or trending or alarming. Simple configuration. So the problem we had on a lot of these ones in our old system is it was just a VAV box. So if I had an exhaust fan I wanted to go pick up with it, it didn't have the capability of doing it because it was only suited to do a VAV box. It's got the blinders on it. It only had one function, and that was it. Factory program can sequence, you couldn't get unique on it. So to meet a lot of the obligations that we have on some of these specs, we would have to do a lot of programming in the background to make it operate properly. The factory program just didn't work for us, and very little modifications were available. So here's the new Eclipse controllers, and that's why we're moving forward on them. These controllers right here have, I mean, if you guys are junkies on this stuff, 4 gigabyte of user storage on them. It's huge. The controllers that we put in previous, the ones we're talking about, the BACnet, the lawn, these are 400 to 600 megahertz processor. That Boss that we just showed around, that really expensive controller, is 800. So you can see these controllers by themselves are just about as powerful as the Boss controllers that are out in the field. So to put that in perspective is that these controllers now are 10 times faster than any of the previous controllers that we have ever put in. So any of your devices you've had out there before, these operate at 10 times the speed. The other is they have 1,000 times more memory. So the new IP controllers are essentially little computers. And that's the way you got to think about it. And that's why we're moving forward on them, because we can use mass amounts of programs in them and being able to not have any problems with them at all. They can do some of the cool features on all of them is, I'll show you. They're hot swap. So you can actually, remember how we have to take a controller and you have to tear it all apart and redo the wiring? They're all hot swappable. So I could actually just take any one of them out, put them back on, and lock them in place, and we're ready to go, right when you lose a component. Downloads the program to it. So it saves on that time for you guys. You have a controller that fails, I can send you the new controller replacement. You stick it in, download the program if you know how to do it, or you call us from remote, we download the program to it, you're up and running right away. So you don't have to worry about pissing around with wiring it. Did I wire it right? Did I short it out? That's the cool part on these ones. Every single one of these controllers can do a hotspot and an access point configuration. So I'll show you a little demonstration here. Well, I'll go through this while I show you a demonstration. Is that we remember before we used to have to always have the boss and everything, and I know for years we preached that, is that we had to have this controller on place to do all graphics, scheduling, alarming, all resided in this controller. So if you've ever been in any of these classes, that's typically what you're seeing. And even some of your systems, your older ones, you needed that front end to be able to do that processing. Now with the way, like we talked about before, with 10 times the speed, 1,000 times the memory, these controllers now can be standalone within reading. So the graphics can be stored on these. You can pull an IP address, and we're going to do that. We're going to pull this demo site up. We can pull it up, create a graphic right on that controller, do trending, alarming, everything from that one controller, and get away from the boss controller. So for example, like this is a perfect scenario. Like these areas right here are two furnaces on, right? Don't need much. Could you imagine putting a front end controller on everyone? Would be very expensive. For an application like this, you put a controller out there. You can also dongle down another network off this. So this can also talk BACnet, MSTP, Modbus. You can bring a network off this one and talk separately. And you can also do Wi-Fi, or hotspot, where I can put an antenna on this one, talk to 16 different wireless controllers and expand my network even further. So there's some real horsepower with these controllers. And we see no reason going backwards when we put any of these in. So that's why we only do the Eclipse controllers in the future. They also can do PoE, Power over Ethernet. So for a cost savings thing, it's really not too bad for us. But can you imagine, like, you don't have to worry about 120. You don't have to worry about pulling 24 volts all the way across the whole system. All you have to do is get the Cat5 that you had to get to this anyways, power over Ethernet switch, and you can power the whole controller over the Ethernet. Pretty cool. Unified solutions, so when we talk about unified solutions, we're talking about like that Personify app I just showed you. Tying the blinds in with the lighting control with the controllers, that's what these are built for. Because the speed in the processor in them is that to pull the lighting in there that says when the occupancy sensor from the light system is on, I also want the HVAC to start. So the possibility of unifying the two of them is built into these already. Standalone capabilities, I just talked to you and showed you how we can actually leave this controller in there. And you wouldn't know the difference between a boss and this if I gave you the IP address, and we'll do it on this one. And the other, it adapts to the current building infrastructure. So IP is everywhere in your building, and you'll see now anymore is like all IP, data's raining all over, and then you got these always like, well, there's a fire one, and then what the hell is this other little line running through here? We're building into the structure they already have in place. And so by us doing Cat5 networks, that's the way the whole system's going to be moving in the future. And our goal is, now some of these systems, obviously, we're on the guards and stuff like that. We're not going to get on your network system. But let's say a school, we have many schools that say, hey, just go to that data rack over here, we'll plug it in. They give us an IP address. We're pulling the whole system up on the network like that. We don't have to run all the way back to a network manager or a data closet to be able to get the information out. We can actually reside on their typical infrastructure there. We plug into their switches, they give us an IP, we have a network. Advanced security, so like FIPS 14-2 level compliant, authentication services, SSO, all the things that typically we have to be able to worry about with your ITs built into the front end of those controllers. Some of the advanced features is built-in communication protocols. So I said this controller here can do Modbus, BACnet, all off of the controller. In addition to it being BACnet IP, it can also talk to other devices off it as well. Scheduling alarm built into it, and HTML graphic interface. So let me just pull that demo up here real quick. Give me a second here. If any of you got to take a little bathroom or something, go ahead. I got to switch over to a different network to do this. So you can see, I'm putting that thing right now too. I'm on that network, but I'm going to this controller, which is right there. So it's got the built-in Wi-Fi on it. I'm going to connect to it. And this is available on every controller. Now it can also be disabled on every controller, so I can see you guys start to freak out here a little bit, but you can disable all these functions that are on there if you don't want. The cool part we use this for is because when we're like out doing troubleshooting, can you imagine, like, we don't have to be stuck in a mechanical room, we can actually go out to each one of the devices, connect to them. All right. So what we're simulating here is that this is its own little network. Maybe if you want to do this, you can come and take a picture, or you can get it from your phone too and do the same thing I'm doing from your phone and it'll look exactly the same. You don't want to mess around with it.
So just type in the IP and address bar there and mess around with that thing.
Yep, so I'll show you. Yeah, if you go to the front, it's got the username and passwords on there. There is some restrictions on it, like I say, we got to put a username and password on there. But if I do 192, gives us a username and password, hash rate. So if you guys want to just go ahead and enter all this in. ASHRAE. You can also take a picture of that, it's got all the information on there. And the other is STEM 1234, STEM 1234. Okay, so now it's loaded. You can see it just loaded that Envysion software right there. Yeah.
We can use, like what you were showing us before we started here, we could access the jail Woodman system through our phones now, right?
Yep, you can, so any of you that have the new Envysion, which should be all of you, you can access the system completely by your
Is it
phone.
1, 2, 3? So we'd have to either be on the Wi-Fi at the facility, or we'd have to have a VPN to get in and do it properly.
Yes. So that's all based on your restrictions of your facility.
Yeah, that's definitely the way I have to. Yeah. It was like point T for me to get a VPN just to do the courthouse one that I rarely use. I can't imagine the jail. One for the jail is going to be, yeah.
So you can see right here, I'm not on any internet or anything like that. I am strictly just on this device. And from here then, I have the ability to do any type of function on it. Here I'm going to simulate some heating. It is a light bulb. So. But again, the cool part is like, I have, hey, stats, make sure I don't blow you away there. No. Hey, they told me.
I know.
So you have the ability, you can do it from your phone too, but you have the ability to control it all from right here. Make those changes if I want to, like, campers. I don't need the boss in place of it. I have just a strictly controller that I was going to put in anyways to do all this function. And what it's doing now, it's doing everything in the replacement of, from the small application of this network manager or Jace or AES. Now, don't get me wrong, you still would need these in larger applications. When you have multiple controllers, there has to be some way being able to process all the information that's going to them. This would be like little standalone applications with very small buildings, like you're talking like 5, 10 controllers at the very most on there, and even that would be like pushing it, you know, like single furnace units. We do it, these are great for those single furnace units that you don't have anything else in the building, you can pull them up on it. Now, that's a VAV controller, and it does, you know, you can see the same application on there that'll do all that, like trending, alarming, everything like that from the system. So that's the power of that, if you can see. It's been shut off for a while, so you can see it started recording and trending. So out of that controller, we're also trending, recording. Here's the available trends we have here. So it's not just like it's a few points here and there, it's actually quite a few. And like I was talking about, with the processor power that's built into all these controllers, you can pick up a lot of information. Then you have the ability for like here reports, things like that. We can create new trends and put them in there. So that one controller is all you're seeing on here, and it's doing all those functions. So that's, again, there's really no reason to look back, and we just use these controllers moving forward. So there's some really cool functions in them. The other thing is right out of the box, if I purchase this right out of the box, I have a graphic and everything already formatted on it, ready to go. It can be started up immediately at that point. Now we put custom programs in to match what we want for our standards, but right out of the box they're ready to go, and they can talk on that network. So, and then you try getting this one?
What's that?
Did any of you guys try getting
Yeah,
that?
I was trying to.
You doing it? So, well, that's all. I just want to show you from the controller level. Those are the kind of cool things you can do from it. Let me get back out of there. Did you see that? And what we can do is I can also, during lunchtime or stuff, we can run over to offices, and I'll show you some of the Envysion and some of the other stuff working on that if you want to see our office actually running.
Those ones, new controllers, pretty cool.
Yeah, they're really cool. And the cool part about that is like, they're not any more money. They're cheaper. And like I say, when you get into old controllers, the processors and stuff of them, the parts to get them, they don't make them anymore. So they're actually more expensive than they are to move forward on the product. System level controller, we talked about that already. We're talking about that's your web interface for your controller. So you have, the controller can actually do the web face, but that's one connection to it. So you can't just take that IP address and like try to broadcast it to all the other VAV boxes. You have that one IP address, and then you have to type in the IP address for the next controller and the IP address for the next controller to be able to log into them. This gives you that one communication path where all of the controllers are dongled underneath this one, and then you view all the graphics in this one. So
40?
Huh?
40? 50?
40, 50.
How many will that do?
So these controllers will do up, well, it depends on your network. You can do up to 250 controllers on this one. And we'll get into the network layout there. A maximum of 50 per IP network chain, depending on if you're doing like a redundant loop. If you're doing a redundant, we shall it back down to 25 controllers just because of the span of the network. We'll go over that one next. Lots of memory, but as I just told you before, this one that'll do 350 controllers of it has 2 times the memory that this one does, which blows your mind, right? That a controller can do that, but they still have a lot. They still have a lot of memory. I mean, we're talking around 800 megahertz in there, so there's still quite a bit of, or for processing speed. 2 gigabytes storage we have on each one of them. So the cool things on some of these ones is there's many different vendors. I said that sell them. A couple things on here is that if you go to the bottom of them, I'll show you. There's a little Wi-Fi. They have a built-in Wi-Fi on them that you can flip the switch over, and you would assign whatever IP address you want to the box. It's like 192.168.1.1, and it would go flip that switch over, and when you connect to it, just like we did with that controller, you could connect to it, and then you would be right on the Wi-Fi directly to the controller. So we can connect primary, secondary, and Wi-Fi all through this one controller.
Now, isn't there a place too, because we have ours like locked out, so you have to go into the program to log in.
Yep, so that's a good point, is that Wi-Fi does not come on, right out of the box, the Wi-Fi is not enabled. You have to go in the program and set the Wi-Fi. You can set it two ways on there. One is you can set it so whenever it's been active, you go to the network manager or the boss agent, go in there, connect to it, enable the Wi-Fi. You can set it up so if there's no connectivity for 1 hour or 24 hours, it'll actually disable and you have to get back into the controller to enable it again to go back to Wi-Fi. Or you can set it so it's enabled 24/7, so you always have the Wi-Fi capability. Or you can completely disable it as well.
Because I think that's how we have ours set up.
Yep.
Just because the guard doesn't like.
We don't want to be on your Wi-Fi, we don't.
They don't like backdoor.
But for the individuals like that hear the schools and stuff like that, a convenience thing, to have the Wi-Fi, not having to get on the network, our techs, it's huge because our tech don't need to worry about finding the IT guy who doesn't want to deal with us anyways half the time. To be able to get access to the Wi-Fi, we can just click that button, go Wi-Fi, connect to this controller, do all of our programming changes when we leave for the day, put it to off. The other thing on here is we have 2 networks on here built into this boss controller. Those networks will do Modbus, back-end MSTP, LAN, depends on whatever type of format you have in. You can also attach on 2 additional networks to this as well, or 4 additional networks to this as well, and then talk any type of communication. I was talking to Ryan, a programmer, the other day, and I was like, have you ran into an application where we have not been able to talk to these controllers of any type? And we can't think of any that we've never been able to communicate to whatever we've been asked to integrate to. Now, there's jar files that are very expensive that gives you the ability to do it. I'm not saying that it's not expensive, but I've yet to find something that I've not been able to communicate and be able to try to pull into this controller that we've been asked to at this point. Hey.
Oh, ASD.
Huh?
ASD.
I'm doing ASD right up there with
Figured
you.
you would be.
Yeah. So that's actually one of the easier ones to do. I'll tell you the toughest one we have is Lutron lighting systems. Lutron lighting system has a very unique communication protocol it has on there.
When you figure it out, let me know, because that's what I've got.
We have one. We figured it out. We do it at Grandview. So Grandview has the Lutron lighting system for all their scene level controllers. And what is it, the Optic Eye? Is that what it? You know what it's called? We have done it. We've got it running at the museum out there at Grandview, under Art Museum, where it'll take the scenes and we can program into the scenes, and then we can actually capture each one of the scene selections on the buttons and go and program them. So again, that's the same thing they ask you, like, have you done it? We've never done it, but we'll work on it. We messed around with it. We do know how to program them that way now. Again, this is the most expensive controller by itself that you can purchase from Woodman on the system. 5 to 15% typically is what it is on the full system cost. Yeah, very robust controller. It does a lot. Typically, this is where, like I said, this is where your graphics are going to store. This is where your network's taking place. So a lot of things go on in this controller that takes place on this one, but spans across to all the different controllers and stuff.
Logistically, are you better off having those on 2 separate locations of your facility if you need to?
So it depends.
Like for me, I'm eventually going to need 2.
Yeah. So if you have 2 networks that are standing by themselves now, one is maybe not on our system, one is on that one. Your best would be to don't bog down the whole boss if you don't have to. Now, you can push these to the limit. I mean, we've had some where we put 200 plus controllers on there. It's slow, but it'll talk, and if it's not a critical issue for you, maybe it'll be a big deal. Because remember, in the background, the controllers are talking peer-to-peer. So this is really, a lot of times, this is just your schedules get downloaded to it, and you're pulling the data. But in the background, these controllers are just talking to one another at a very fast network speed when it comes down to it. I'll just highlight on some of the benefits of the bosses. IoT, does everyone know what IoT, Internet of Things? So Internet of Things is they have built-in capability of talking IoT. This is getting to be a big thing. Think about, have you been watching commercials lately where your Ring doorbell is talking to your refrigerator, right? Have you seen that on the TV? That's the IoT, that's the Internet of Things. Taking things like a coffee maker that don't usually are dumb just devices, making them so, I'm going to take, my HVAC system turns on, but it also turns on my coffee maker. Those are IoT type of devices that are starting to be a big industry. I've seen a statistic that in 2013, the IoT was around $33 million, or $33 billion. Now it's $134 billion is what it is at this era right now. So you can see where everyone's starting to invest in that IoT. And that's the reason why we move forward on future-proofing your buildings, of getting the IP in place of it. Because when these devices come on, you have the ability to start talking to them. Connectivity options, you can connect both wireless wires, so it gives you that ability we just talked about. Cost less, easier to integrate. So again, I don't have to worry about every one of the controllers going out there. I can have all of my communication, everything taking place at this one controller, which is somewhat cost effective instead of a guy going around and pounding each IP address in the controller to go out to the viewer and the system. Visualization, they're all built with the HTML5 built onto them. Now we put Envysion on them, but they are built with the HTML5 graphic package on each one of them. And security has got the security abilities for all of them. So, am I gonna have to shut it off?
They'll be here until tonight, mess up that.
I don't think that's fine. Different types of networks, so this is what we were talking about. This is with Steve, this is where you're kind of going to on this one. We have different types of network architectures out there. One is called an air-gapped networks, and the other is a standalone. An air-gapped network, it would be ideal situation for us, but it's not very cost effective. An air-gapped network, when we're talking about, is like, okay, I got my controller out here. I got my network switches built into it. I provided my own internet into this controller by itself, completely separate from your corporate network. All my firewall security is already taking place, and it's all contained on this controller. Now, one is, more than likely, I'm not going to be able to get my own internet to that controller. And the other is, when I leave or I walk away, and you're going to have to go to your IT to be able to keep things up to date, they're not going to want anything to do with this, because it's not on their network. So, while it might be the best option to be able to put out there, it's just not feasible for us. Standalone network is typically what we do. What we'll do is we'll put the boss controller out there. And we have all of our controllers that we talked about before are connected together through switches. And they're brought up to the secondary network on our control system. So there's a primary network, which is one IP address going into this controller for communicating. And on the secondary, where we got all of our network is going out to talk to the IP controllers. Or back, no different if we're talking back into MSTP or LAN or any of that stuff either. There's just in the background, it's running. Now that does two things for us. One is, I only have to ask for one IP address from your IT department, which usually I can get away with that, no problem. But when I have to start asking for multiple IP addresses, some of them really start getting bent out of shape. So typically what you'll see with us is a standalone application, and in most cases, you want that. Even the Guard, even public schools, you want those scenarios, because if the network goes down, I don't have to worry about every one of my controllers losing its IP address or that. I mean, I can just connect directly to the controller and we can keep moving on. And the topology with it is usually the star or the daisy chain topology. So when we go through them ones, you can see here's just an example of a star topology and a daisy chain topology. Now the star topology will be typically what you're in your computer networks, right? One home run going out, hitting a computer, another home run going on in a computer, all comes back to switches on the system. That's the most reliable type of network you can have for the system, but it's not really cost effective for us because it limits us on the amount of devices we can put on the network, and also limits us on the length we can go out there to be able to pick up the system. The other one is a daisy chain, and that's typically what you'll see in almost every HVAC application. The daisy chain is, we go from one controller to the next controller to the next controller. The downfall of that one is where we have the reliability on here is if I lose this controller, I still have all these talking, correct? If I lose this controller, I lose everything going this way. Or if I lose that network line, I lose everything going that way. And sometimes the HVAC equipment is not as critical that we don't have to worry about that. If it is critical, we have to worry about that. That's where we go into a redundancy with the star topology and the daisy chain. Essentially what happens is you lose connection from this switch goes out, reroutes it goes to that switch. You lose a break in the network. Instead of this switch always constantly going here and going back, never communicating if we get a break here, this one talks, ends there, goes back, this one talks, ends and goes back. So if you do have a very secure network that you need to worry about the redundancy and its critical applications like clean rooms, anything like that, pharmaceuticals where we have to have the redundancy networks in there, there is a capability, but that starts getting really expensive because you can see you're doubling up on switches, you're limiting the amount of network that you can put on the system for that reason. The thing on there is, on this typical networks on the Jason we were talking about, we can put a maximum of 250 controllers on. That's really pushing it, and that's all dependent on what our broadband, what we got for capability of internet speed and things like that on the system. So we have a capability of doing that, 250 controllers. When we're talking about on a chain controller with a redundancy, we're gonna do 200, we would do 25 controllers on this typical network because that's all we can really handle on the speed of it. Now, if we do a single open loop network, we can do 50 controllers going from one to the next on that one, because we don't have to loop back around to be able to pick up and we don't lose that communication link. On any one of these controllers that we have out here, sorry, I gotta refer to the notes because this is the detail of the links. So what we're looking at here is that when we do this redundancy, we can only go a maximum of 1,421 feet. But when we do the daisy chain, connecting them all together, we can get up to 2,788 feet. So you can see why in HVAC applications, we can hit further distances by just doing the single loop application. Now, one critical thing that we have to worry about on that one is that we have to follow the same guidelines that anyone who's doing networking has, is that we can't go over that 328 feet rule. Which means is that if I go from this controller to this controller, I can't span over 320 feet or I'll lose my network. And that's just the rules of law, or of IP, is that that's no difference if you were going to do a computer network or any of that one. 328 feet is the golden rule where you do not want to go past that length. And so what we do is we recommend that we don't go any more than 164 from controller to controller and only 328 feet at the very end of the loop. And the reason for that is that in the controllers, we have a fail-safe Ethernet switch in there. So if you lose this controller, and if I was going from 328 feet to 320 feet there, I would have had to span to this next controller, right? And I'd be over that length and I'd lose communication in the whole system. So what we do on that point is that we limit to 164 going across to each controller. And that switch is built in there that says if this controller comes out of the loop, I can span that 328 feet distance from this controller to this controller. It's got the ability built into it to boost the signal to go from this controller to that controller to leap the 328 feet. So that's where on our network we keep that in mind, is that we want to make sure that we do not span past any of those. Typically most of our networks are like 50 feet, 75 feet, but for the really long runs, the end of the loop can go up to 328 feet, but in between each controller, we don't want to go any more than 164 feet. But our controllers will span across that if they need to. So that's a little bit on the network. Any other questions you guys had on the network?
No, that's good enough, because I was gonna move a couple of mine.
You can move them, and that's where I bring this up for that reason, is like, because if you guys are doing, because a lot of you do, you're moving walls and stuff around that one, you want to make sure that you map out that from controller to controller is 164 feet, and then from the
For me,
furthest.
I just called Jason and asked him, and he told me, don't go over 360 feet.
Yeah, don't go over 360 feet. And what happens is if you go over that, you'll lose the network. You'll see that the controllers will all fall off at that point. Even though you have a good connection and everything will test out right, it's the link that it can't pass that data through. And when you get into PoE, power over Ethernet, and redundancy, all those things change. But we're not going to get into all the IT basics and stuff like that. But for the most part, what you guys need to know is if you're moving stuff around, keep within those parameters. So when we're talking about networks, here's a typical network, HVAC network that we're looking at. You can see on here that we got the web supervisor, network manager, and then these are our data or communication runs going out. This is where we're talking about, we do not want to go any more than 50 controllers per network run. 25 is ideally, to be honest with you. We try to stay within the 25 controllers per network subnet on the system. But you can see as we go down there, we have the ability to, like if I have that VAV controller here, I might be hardwired with an Ethernet connection, but then I have the Wi-Fi capability of bouncing off that one. And you can see on your layout, because this is on one of your layout sheets that you have there, that you have the ability, your network sheet, that's kind of for you to be able to look at it from. on your own if you want. You have the ability to pick up an additional 16 controllers. So we're hardwired each individual component, right, controller? But then you have the ability to be able to put a wireless device on that one and broadcast and pick up 6 different wireless options. So scenarios we see like on that type of network is like medical refrigerator freezers. You know, they're always moving them in and out, so we put a wireless sensor inside the refrigerator freezer so they'll pick up, do the trending and stuff like that, and we don't have to hardwire to that refrigerator freezer, and they can move it to wherever they want. So you can see some of the advantages of that open wireless network being tied on to communication, but yet still hardwired from controller to controller. And then you can see on the bottom of them, they have the different backend, MSTP, IP, LAN works, module. So all these different types of communications coming together and being brought into one system. And the easiest way I always describe this is this, when we talk about networks, is all these controllers speak different languages, right? And so French, German, Spanish, and we all bring it up to the language we know right now is English. And so even though they're talking their own language, it's all sorted out here on their different networks, residing underneath the controllers and being pulled up to the front end. So the scenario we have here is, you can see we have a web supervisor, and we have a network manager. I won't go into a lot of detail with it, but I do want to kind of explain what the difference is. This would be the boss or network manager. We're talking about the system level controller. The web supervisor, as you can see, is residing on a network. And typically that's either in the cloud, so we put the IP on their server, or we put the software on a server, and then that communicates to all of it. It's just software that's loaded on there. Or they have a standalone computer where everything is funneling up into that controller. So the web supervisor has the ability of one web supervisor. We've got a boss, all of them talking. And the responsibility of that web supervisor is to pull all the information from those individual controllers. They'll talk on the bottom side to all the controllers that are down there, and the web supervisor harvests all the information gathered from the bosses out of the controllers. Does that make sense on the network? Does everyone kind of get that part of it? Is that, from the web supervisor standpoint, it's really just the big software package that brings everything together.
So like in our facilities, two facilities we have now, if we had a web supervisor, we could pull both buildings and we can get like really long trending, yes?
Yep. So that's the key thing on the web supervisor, is to get a mass amount of trending. Remember, we only have 2 gigabytes of storage on this controller. You want terabytes of information typically on data. You need to go to a web supervisor that can handle that. That software that unloads all the information down to a server. And so to do that, you need to have some mass storage, and that's where your cloud server on your computer system stores. So yes, you could bring in, so for example, like Post School right now has a web supervisor there, but they have all these different remote location buildings out there. We bring them all into one web supervisor, and that's where they're looking at their graphics from. It's just an easier way of being able to pull all the information together at one point.
So if I was trying to log into each building, we would log into the web supervisor.
And then you see all the graphics that go there. There's some downfalls to it too. I mean, one is the graphic. Like if you lose web supervisor, you're not really able to see the graphics at each one of the controllers. But it's graphics, right? Everything still works in the background. And that's one thing that I'll emphasize on the controllers is that we program all these controllers to be standalone. So even if I lose this front end device, this is still going to work in the background. It might not have the schedule that you had on there. It might not have the exact set point you put in there. You might lose the trending. But it's still going to, in the background, do the function of an air handler, a VAV box, a heat pump. That's the way we have them all built, that you can unplug it and it's still going to run. So in power connectivity, we just talked about the daisy chain network. Typically, again, controller to controller, all the way through, doesn't matter what controller's in there. I can have a VAV box connected right directly to ECY 1000, it doesn't matter. It works the same either way. Wi-Fi hotspot, we just did it from the phone, so you can see the controllers have that capability of doing a Wi-Fi hotspot directly from them. And it's not for everyone, so obviously at the Guard, you don't want anything going on your Wi-Fi or any of that stuff, but for applications where the majority of us work with it, this is a good option to be able to connect to a controller or any other device like that. Wi-Fi access point. So again, we go up to 16 controllers by plugging just a wireless communication. dongle into it, and we can pick up an additional 16 controllers. Don't have to pull any wire, don't have to do anything. Power them up, and they'll connect directly to the wireless. So that's 16 per controller. So the application these are used on would be like historical buildings. You can't penetrate through the walls of the historic building and things like that. It just doesn't make sense, and so that's a nice option to be able to, huh? Our courthouse. Yeah. We've had some applications where, like a jail, where you've got to span over courtrooms and things like that, where it just doesn't, it's just not feasible, so we use the wireless solution. Span over areas where you don't have the ability to actually run a wire through it. You can actually do the wireless. And again, everyone's so scared of the wireless stuff, which we understand, but it's pretty proven anymore. It's out there. I mean, who doesn't have Wi-Fi on there? We're on Wi-Fi right now for the network, so you can imagine the controller is still standalone. So if something fails, we have the ability to go right back to the application that's in that controller and still move on. And then once communication is restored, hey, here's the schedule you need to be running. Here's the information feeding back to the network manager. All right, so any questions on the controllers, any of that aspect? Where we are right now? This is probably where the majority of you, we've gone through a lot of the additional stuff we've talked about before, except for the new Eclipse controllers. So we'll jump into we got about half hour, we'll get through the controllers, we'll get through the programming, and then after lunch we'll be right into the graphics, where I know that's where everyone wanted to probably get started off right up the bat anyway. But we'll go through the control drawings. So we'll just start off with this first basic one, the overview control drawings. So our control drawings, these are pretty cut and dry, but there's some information here that we want to know that you're able to take away from here for going through the system and making sure that when we talk about that app, finding out the part number that's on there, what does the wiring go to. A majority of you do a lot of your own work, so for troubleshooting and stuff like that, this is kind of the information we want to make sure that you know from us. The key thing I want you guys to know is that for any drawing, to make sure that you see what the latest date of your drawing is on here. So this will tell you if it was as built, where we're at, the latest date of any revisions on there. Over on the left-hand side is just obviously our cover page, table of contents, network manager, all the information, and then the last, of course, is the bill of material on the project. And you can see we always want to make sure that our project date is matching with our creation date. So you can see right here, 5/15 creation date. You can see right here we have last step date of 5/18. So we have some changes to the drawings. The first drawing you see is the boss 8, or the network manager. You can see that we show on this one that we have an Ethernet connection to it, which should be on the primary. So the 1 and 2 is signifying primary network, secondary network. Primary is 1, secondary is 2, obviously. And we have a hardwired communication in this one, so you can see we have a 485 connection going out there. And if you can see on your drawings, it shows its network, what is that, 11,000? So we're network 11,000 coming off of the 485 on COM1, which shown on your controller right there. So our drawings should match, and we try to always make sure our drawings match with the way the controllers look at for you. So when you're out there, it's match up, fix, match up, fix. Just typical like RJ45 connection options, networking things, some of it that is important to you, some that isn't. On the bill of material on every page you'll see has got the information that is on there of the components that are added to the system. So you can see we have a Verizon power adapter, we have all the component numbers that you need on there. I'll show you when we get down to actually the controllers of what we have on there. So for example, we have a Verizon controller on this one. It's a display that's out in the network. So exactly, this is the horizon display. It mounts into your wall flush mounted, and it's more or less like an iPad. And the exact part number here matches the part number here. So when we're talking about part for part, that's what we want to make sure is that we give you something that you want to plug the components here, you plug it directly in, and you're up and running again. That's a horizon display. Well, if you guys are interested, we can walk down to the shop during lunch or after lunch and show you one running. They're really cool. They're like an iPad mounted to the wall.
Okay, so it's similar like, multi-seat, we got a screen on the wall, you can access.
Yep, but this has graphics, so instead of just like your, instead of just having the controller, this is actually the graphics you're seeing here are actually the graphics on the wall too. So they match with one dimension. Our controller layout, so if you're ever going in our control panels, this is what it should look like actually in the panels, network level with the controllers that are in place on it. You can see here is the card access system, we won't go into that one. But again, here's the controller, so what we're looking at from here, from the standpoint is you can see that we have stage 1, stage 2, DO1, DO2, here's the controllers, numbers that are outputs of each one, and the inputs going on to it. Our controllers are always left or right. On the left side is our input, on the right hand side is our output. And along with it, we've got the network room display controller. So you should be able to, see if I even got a controller here. I'll try one. Show it around, but again, in addition to just the numbering on there, if you see that all the numbering on the terminals, good one for you guys too, matches the terminal numbering that's on each one of the control drives too. So the numbers that match on here are a direct matchment of what's on the controller. So we're trying to make it as simple as possible. One reason as we do that is because we have multiple installers that are coming through. And if we have 10 different type of installers that have new staff on board all the time, we want to make sure that the wiring is super simple for them and that there's no problems with it. So that's why these drawings should match with what our terminals are in the system. I'll let you guys So it's pretty cut and dry on the equipment. Again, our equipment drawings should emulate what's going on in the space as well. So we want to make sure that we only have one fan. Our KeyAct and our coil configuration matches with what's out there in the field. Because if you come back to me and say, hey, I want to be able to do dehumidification, I need to know that my coil configuration, all that stuff is correct. And so some of this stuff seems kind of minor, but when it comes down later down the road and you're asking for me to do additional work for you, I want to make sure that our drawings are right. And so at any point, I'll tell everyone is that if you have wrong drawings or anything like that, send them on to us. We will fix them for free, recreate them, save them, and give you a new set of them. It's in the benefit of us to be able to have the most accurate as possible. And so if we give them to you, you give them to us, so when we go down later and say, I need to do an upgrade, I can actually give you a true number, and I don't go out there and it's like, holy crap, where'd these 10 different points come from? Well, we didn't as-build it correctly. It wasn't given to us correctly. So if you find any discrepancies in graphics, any discrepancies in the as-builds, let us know. We will fix them for free on that part. The last page on these particular drawings would be the bill of material. And again, these part numbers would be the directory part numbers that you would send to us to be able to have a replacement for it. If it's not the direct replacement, what we would do is cross-reference. So if it's the very last page, you'll see a bill of master bill of material. If we happen to put a brand new new part out there that doesn't match with what's here, we'll definitely give you the drawing, make the drawing changes we need to be able to put on the graphic or on the drawings to reference where you can wire easily. But essentially, we want you to be able to use this part number to be able to send us the information from our app saying, I need this exact part number to be able to order. And that's what we want from you guys, is to give us the correct, because there's nothing more frustrating for us is that we get the wrong part number because it's like, oh, it's a sensor out there. So we order what thinks just is like a 10K sensor. It comes to be, it's like a unique 4 to 20 mil signal that the sensor is gathered. So, and then you get frustrated because I sent you the wrong part, but it's because both of us weren't talking together. So we ask that you use the control drawings to be able to reference any parts that you need ordered or take the picture of it. So that way we get in your hands exactly what we're expecting and you're expecting. And we don't go with this back and forth, being like, all right, ship it back to me, I'll get you a new one. We can end that right away if you know how to read the control drawing and know what parts to order at that point. Any questions on those drawings? Okay. And if I'm going through stuff fast, I apologize, we're getting down to the wire where we've got food coming on it. The next one is the schedules. And you might not have, I don't know if they printed out the schedules, I apologize, I was starting up a job yesterday, I didn't print out everyone. I'll go ahead and go through it. You'll also get a schedule sheet. The schedule sheet, let's see if I can expand it out. The schedule sheet will have all of the network information on it. So remember, we were talking about that 11,000 network that came off the top of the Jason when we looked at the first drawing on your control drawing. You can see over here, I know it's hard to see, but if you see the network's all 11,000. This is all the controllers that are associated with 11,000 network. So even though the network, the schedule will work for both backend, MSTP, LAN, any of those ones, the schedule sheet is the address of the controller, what's in it. So it's on the 11,000 network. It's an IP address of 192.168.0.121. The next one's 122.123. That's what it's referencing here, is that we need to know the IP address of that controller, or what is it. And if we happen to be using the DHCP, does everyone know what a DHCP, it'll auto-assign an address now. We have to know what the MAC address is in these controllers to be able to put it on there, so we have some way of being able to know what this controller is in the network, no matter what it is. And so that's what that schedule sheet takes place for you. It tells you the controller, it tells you what plan, what graphic plan to look at, the location of where it's located, and the type of controller. And schedules will also be on their valve schedules. So for new construction, so for the air guard, when you're getting your new drawings and you're looking at them, the schedule will have your the schedule will have the controller's addresses and everything like that. It'll also have the valve schedule on there, what valves, sizes, GPMs, all that stuff, CV goes with it. What what VFDs are on there, the horsepower, all that. That's all the stuff that's on the schedules, dampers. So everything like that will be on the schedule sheets. The sequence operations, we have the drawings. This is going to tell you exactly how the equipment is supposed to run. So from your control drawings, if you ever have a question that says, how does my makeup air unit run in my kitchen? You have the ability to go in there and look at sequence operations, and it should be programmed to match that sequence operation. Even if we're doing unique programming on the system, we want that to reflect on this page of what is actually going step by step on the sequence. If my outdoor air temperature is 45 degrees, I'm actually opening the outdoor air damper. You want to know that because you're trying to troubleshoot these systems, right? And you need to know what progress is going through the whole steps of, like, based on outdoor air, based on hot water availability, chilled water availability, any type of those situations you want to know. And this is what it'll explain to you in the sequence operation. So, any questions on the sequence operations? Well, the next one I'll show you is the markup prints. So the markup prints is just really an overview and blueprint of your building. And before, for years, we never really cared too much about the markup prints. Now we really started diving into it because one is we're creating these IP networks all over your system, right? And we need to know what links we're going to, where we're getting power from, what breaker the power's on, that stuff that we really were taking, we didn't really care at that point, you know, and we were kind of like, oh, it's over on this breaker and all that. Well, as these systems get bigger, you need to know what breaker they're on, you need to know where your networks are running, and we talked about before, if I have to stay within the 320 rule of IP, I need to know where my segmented communication links are so I can total the whole thing up and I don't have a network that's going crazy. So that's what we're looking at when we look at the markup plans. And so what you should have on each markup plan, as you can see right here, is that we have, this one actually has the camera lighting, it has the IP information showing us what connections we have going from what device to what device. When we get them back from our field, ideally what we're looking at is for our field guys to come back and say, I have 165 feet running on this network line right here. I have 20 feet running on this network line here. So when we have this network pack on there, and we have this available for your building, so if you ever want this, let us know. And if you're not getting this, let us know. We'll get you that information. Now your building, if you got an integration, I don't know what to do. So, you're kind of SOL at that point,
I
but
didn't want that.
yeah, I'm sure you do. And I can do that for a small fee. But this is what, when we look at the markup prints, that's what's on the markup prints. It's gonna be our power, where our power is coming from, where it's ending at, what breaker it's on. It's gonna have our network on there. It's gonna have where we started from and where we're ending at. And it's gonna have what zones we have. It's gonna have our thermostat. Which thermostat is going to what piece of the equipment, and that's what you're gonna see on all that stuff. So, on your markups.
Do the installs.
What's that?
You get the electrical contractor, you're really.
So we give them the as-bills, and we really try to, we won't paint until we do that stuff. That's what we're trying to do with them. Like, we have as-bills, you have as-bills. Make sure you do your as-bills for us. So that's what we try to get from all the contractors. If you've not seen this, let us know. And again, like we talked about Clay County, if I just did an integration on them, I can't really do much for you. I can tell you where I went for the network manager, but I can't do anywhere that way. But it's a good idea in the future if you have other buildings, if you know the network. This is huge because this saves everyone a tremendous amount of time. There's nothing more frustrating for a tech or anyone to go out in the field and find that I have a network problem, and then I'm going to pull every ceiling tile out, trying to find where that break is. And it could be going from actually here, to up here, down here, and down there, and it's a nightmare. So, and you don't know if it started out, you don't know if it followed the daisy chain configuration. At that point, you don't know, so you're kind of winging it. And in the bottom line, it could be just a power issue too. You could look at it and like, if I'm looking at it, it was never a network issue. But when I looked at the overview drawing and I showed that I had 8 devices or 9 devices on a power network, and I'm only supposed to have 6, you can identify that stuff kind of pretty quickly as we go through the system. So the markup's a great thing on there that I'll try to get on every job for you. And if you're missing some of them or you don't have them, let us know. We'll get those in your hands. Sit here, obviously. All right, we can do the GFX stuff after we get done with lunch. Any questions you guys have on anything from this point? Yeah. This is our office manager, Andrea, who's busy trying to get everything cleaned up on there.
If you call and order parts, she'll answer the phone and get them to you, so.
Dan Staney is one of the new additions to ours. He's our IT guru, so as we've been discussing on these controllers, where we're moving forward and future-proofing our buildings, and it's all based on IT. And to be honest with you, we were never IT professionals, and we're not still right now. But we lean on individuals like Dan, who's been in this industry for years, to be able to assist us on helping us make our markup overview drawings and things like that to make sure that we're following the guidelines of proper cabling and stuff like that. So Dan's been a great addition to our company and helping us move forward with this new future controller we're using. So if you ever get a call and you have questions like that and you're talking to anyone on the phone, she's probably the gal you talk to on the phone, Andrea.
Yeah, I might not know
or
the answers, but I can find somebody.
So
I won't know the answer.
then you put a Facebook link. You want to know any of them?
Unless they have a billing question.
A billing question? Or parts?
Yeah, billing questions or parts.
She helps us with a lot of parts, so. A lot of hats we're in the company, so we appreciate that from everyone. Guys, come on out and help yourselves. Lighting, if I had other devices, I'm going to find the equipment where the sensors being turned, and CO2, humidity, all them are being followed from the equipment. Go back to the main screen again. So, at a lot of times, what's your guys' opinion on not having, like, so many of you are legacy customers with us and have had this, and so a lot of times we're trying to get through the struggle of not having like the temperature shown on there on the floor plan that we used to. Are you guys okay with the way that looks, or what's the feedback from you guys?
I might be, but he's colorblind, so.
We ran into that one, yes.
Might be.
But I can tell shades.
You can tell shades.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I can see when the difference is, at least. So that isn't really a bother with me.
Now, our system with the jail, I don't believe we have the option to do like what you're clicking on right now.
And this is something that's going to be added or taken out of any system that's out. This is just what is going to be canned in every program that's going on there. So, like Steve was saying, he had one of the first Envysion programs out there. If these are things he likes, these are the things we need to put on there, because this is what we're trying to move forward on everything on there. So,
Yeah,
as I do training, you guys are probably, some of you are like, I don't have that, and then Pella's like, I have all this stuff. And, you know, Kentucky was like, I don't have temperatures and stuff like that, but that's stuff that can all be added. So I want you guys all to know that everything I'm training you on are things things that can be added to the system. And you might come, you know, maybe a year later or 2 years later, and you'll see that we have other stuff that you didn't have in the functions. We're always kind of evolving, and that's kind of the beauty of it, is that we get the feedback from you of what needs to be added to the system, and we incorporate it into ours and find out what's some of the best standards and move forward. So any questions on any other thing with, to do with the scaling, the set points, heating, cooling capacities, any of that? Yeah.
But to backing up just a little bit, most of the time we get a service call is if I'm too hot, I'm too cold. So with us, maybe the temperatures would be nice to have.
Yeah, and you'll still have that value on here, because when you get the calls, I would assume it's probably like, okay, what we're finding out is that that's one of our bigger hangups we're getting from our customers. They're so used to seeing our temperature on the floor plans, and they're so used to, and that's all, that's fine. That's why we ask this opinion when we're in the classes. Typically, if you're getting a call, I would assume that the first place that we would look would be this room, because they're calling. And that's where we're trying to like visually train you guys rather than scanning training you. You're so used to scanning through a page and where is my problem? We're trying to change and flip the script on you a little bit and say, okay, look at this screen. Green, you shouldn't even care about it. It should be fine. There should be no problem there. Because if they are calling in as green, you can just say, you're good. You're right on the set point. Is there something else that we're struggling with? Yeah.
Is there any way we could have like the room numbers? Like we used to have the room numbers.
Yeah.
And this is really, it'd be easier to have the room numbers, I think.
And so this is the stuff, feedback we're looking for, guys. Yes, I agree, because what
I know the
you have to do
area.
this, right? You're
Yeah,
going
I
through
know
like-
the area where the room is, but it was so much quicker to go, okay, there's
Okay.
1108 or.
Nope. This is what, like I said, this is our first Envysion
Yes.
N4 class, so I need your feedback of things that you definitely need me. So what he did on this one's a little different than the rest of it you have, is he's actually put, like buried behind the graphic, you can see he's got rooms back there, the names, or is that something you guys
I would do room, or something, yeah.
Well, rooms, I mean, it could be rooms, this just happened to be our office, but if you look at some of the other ones, there's nothing on there, there's just the room.
Yeah,
And that's kind of confusing, but we're looking for feedback from,
names or room numbers would work, yeah.
because we had a customer, like this customer,
Not names. Okay.
Now, like for mine if I go into my individual
Oh, yeah, a lot of times.
controls of each room, like back when you put this on,
yeah,
he made it to where I could change the name on that window, and it reflected back in my main
yeah, and we can do that.
which was awesome.
Yeah.
Then I could, because he just knew, RP1 or RP2. I could go back and change the actual name, so now when other people look at it, they know what the name is, they know what the room is. So it was very user friendly for me.
And that's what we're trying to create for you guys, is being able to understand. I don't know what your rooms are.
Right.
I don't know, like, if we're having to do like a new construction, and this happens all the time in schools and stuff like that, is that we get the prints out. We only think we can rely on is the mechanical portion of it. Our mechanical equipment number is not gonna change, but you're typically gonna apply change other things. So that's where we struggle a little bit with. And there are a couple options we can do. So one of the cool things that's on here too now is that if we look at the set point, so I'll put in the notes that we want to look at, put the room numbers and stuff like that on there. The temperatures, I think everyone's agreement that the gradient is kind of cool, it's a nice little thing to have on there. The other thing you have on here is a playback setup, so you can play back what goes on in the building. Does everyone have a playback? So I got to kind of know. Okay.
No, I think we're assuming, yeah, I'm interested in that.
So the playback is a cool little feature on here where I can go in here and I can say, I want to send a playback to the lab.
No way.
Let's just say, let's just say 72, and I can either say days, if I have it, or I can just say hours.
Wouldn't that depend on the memory of your
Yep,
control?
yep, definitely, depends on the memory. And I can click OK, and then I can hit the playback. And you can see it's going through there, and you can see how it's showing our time frame, and then it's showing how the building is reacting based on the time. So, scrolling back down through there. It's kind of hard to tell with the temperature because it's not really changing that often, but you can kind of see. But I'll do lighting and show you. The lighting really makes some drastic changes in the way it's
So
going.
there is one thing that, like you click into like, our see ours has the history on the right-hand side.
Yep.
You know, like a little graph, like, so we find ourselves accidentally like zooming in way too far.
Okay.
And so how do you get, yeah, okay. So how do you get back to like, you know, to zoom out of that boundary? Like,
Histories.
To get out of the zoomed in view?
We'll go in, I'll pull it up in here and see if we'll go through the same thing.
Okay.
You should be able to just left click or right.
We found that if we had to like go to like another. Go
Yeah,
back.
we do that.
Yeah, that would reset us.
Well, you gotta use that left click.
So here's a lighting level, I just went to lighting level, which the playback looks a little more. So if you click on the center of the playback feature, you can see that you can either do relativize, which would be the days or hours that you want it to set up to, or you could pick the days or the calendar, the week, or whatever range you want. Again, like Steve said, though, this is all dependent on what's stored in the system, so it's not gonna go back like 2 years if you do not have 2 years of memory in there, so don't kid yourself on some of that stuff. So I'm gonna go back here, we're gonna click in the center on the date, we're gonna go here to relativize. We'll go to, let's go 3 days, and click OK. And then we'll go to the playback. And we should see it start to change the colors of the lights, and you can see where they dim, they don't dim. And the cool thing on this is, like I said, for lighting, if you have the ability to see, are my lights really turning off at night, or are they not, this gives us the playback ability to see. For energy savings, who's leaving the light on, and I'm sure it's probably me, to be honest with you, which I incriminate myself, but you can see right there, we go off, and you can see we're kicking back on, and the dimming is going up and on.
I don't know if Scott would agree, but I would think that if you guys just get rid of that function altogether, all the lighting controls, and just go back to the switch, we'd be good.
You're killing me here.
I can see something.
I'd have to see if any of you guys got openings for me then. The lighting stuff, I mean, you're okay with the HVAC then, all right? Not having that on the old Mercury dial, or you guys want to go back to that too?
Dial.
Because if it is, I'm packing it up and we're out of here.
Definitely not.
See ya. I'll start with you. All right, so any questions on like the real time or any of that playback stuff? If it's not on your system, let me know. That's something we can look at adding as a real feature.
It's not on our system.
Clean. All right, so we got them there. The weather service, depending on if we have outside access to the system we were talking about before, like we're standalone a lot of times in buildings. The weather service is based on the DNS number. So we have to get a DNS from your IT department, and they have to be able to allow the National Weather Forecast website to be able to be accessed to it for us to see the weather on there. So that's just dependent on what they let punch through the firewall. And so sometimes you might see that you have the weather service on here, and sometimes you might not. But a lot of times it's just a matter of you have to direct them to say www.weather.com, or there's NORA, depending on which one they're using on the system, has to be able to be accessed through the web. And they allow that one sliver of data to be passed through there, and that's your IT department directing that. But the cool thing on the weather is what we utilize it for is that we use it as a backup to our regular outdoor air. So since so much equipment is dependent upon outdoor air sensors and the outdoor humidity and all that, if we happen to lose a sensor on site, we fold over to the web-based sensor, and vice versa. If we lose the weather service from the web, we bounce over to the field wired sensor. So there is a reason for the weather services, and in all of our programs, we have it built in the background that we have that weather service enabled in there, and then we have the two of them mirrored together. And for a programming standpoint, how we're doing it is we just have a higher priority level of one or the other. So if you say I want to use the weather service from the web as your higher priority and the field wired one, it would be a level of 8 and the wired would be a level 7, and if one failed, it would just drop out of the command and would move the other one up to priority level. So, and the other thing is it can now you can get 7-day forecast. So we were talking before when we were talking about like switching over summer winter based on a chiller, right? So you're like, or cooling tower, when can I do that? We have a couple buildings where we use the 7-day forecast, and what we'll do is it's a 2-pipe system, and we can go from heating to cooling, but obviously we don't want to go from a cooling tower when we're doing boiler because we'll shock the chiller. So what do is we take the weather forecast and say, okay, for the next 7 days, we're supposed to have weather above 60 degrees. What we do then is we switch over the boiler system, we let it go through a cool down, it looks at the loop, and then it goes straight into the two-pipe system, flips all the way over and goes into a cooling system at that point and gets it ready. And then vice versa, if we have temperatures that are below 60 degrees for an average of 7 days on the forecast, we'll shut down the chiller, and then we'll go into a boiler set. So we'll give it a recovery time and let it switch, but that's all based on the weather forecast. And we don't have any sensors that can usually do that, but there is a 7-day forecast built into the web service that allows us to do that. And we are using it on campus that we're actually doing that, and it works pretty well.
Can you set that up for a manual switchover?
Sure can. They do it for both, so, yeah, sometimes they get so antsy, they're like, well, what was it just a couple weeks ago? We went, one day it was 40, the next day it was 90. I mean, it was like a 50-degree swing. But on that scenario, I don't know how yours is, but this was a two-pipe system, so you have to have a recovery time, and that was built in, and what they were doing is they were gonna shock their boiler, or the chiller bundles with the warm temperature, so they had to give it a recovery time, so that's why we had the program built into it. Pretty neat though, but you get outdoor air temperature, outdoor air CO, or outdoor temperature, outdoor humidity. It's all free sensors and stuff like that. It's a nice little backup to have. So we kind of got into the equipment. I'm going to show you how to set up a user now. Does everyone know how to set up a user or no?
Nope.
So on your system, you should have an advanced tab. On the advanced tab, when you click on that, you're going to see that it goes into services, drivers, and you can see there's this WCC. Essentially, what we're doing right now when we go into the services is we're going into the N4 programming of this controller. So we're going into down into the controller program of it. So if you can see when I clicked down there, I went to system services, and the options were drivers, system services. The driver component were in the advanced settings would be like, this would be our network. So if I click on here, you can see there's my rooftop units 1, 2. So we're into a little bit of the deeper programming of the system, not too bad. If I clicked on that, any of those, I could go down there and look at the programming. So when I was talking about your privileges of being able to see the system, this is probably not somewhere other than you guys as administrators would be. You wouldn't want just let's say a cleaning personnel or maybe someone who takes care of your security. You're not going to want them into this portion of it, and I'll show you how we can keep them out of that portion of the system. So if I click here on services, and you can see I can go to user services. The cool thing that in N4 that makes it somewhat easier to use is most of you have AX in here, right? You're familiar with AX. You could always right click on any one of these and go to views, and you can see how we have the user managers or we have the AX property sheet. So we can go into either one of them. And you can see that I could go So you have the ability to go into either one of them as an AX platform or as just a regular, the N4. So let me. So that's a little bit different than what you're used to, right?
This one is similar to like what we did with Josh, the job one here.
So if we click on here, you can either add new and add a new user from the system, or you can duplicate. I always suggest duplicating because it already has your nav files, which we're going to talk about, and everything like that.
Yeah, I think that's what we do now with our job system.
So you can go in here, click on the name, and do a duplicate. The first column that comes in here, this is where you set up the username. So this is where your username gets set up. It doesn't need to be underscore, that's how I set it up all the time. Yep. The username is forgiving when it comes to it, the password is not. again, test username. The full name doesn't really matter. I always keep it the same, but you can change it to whatever you want. So we'll go to, let's put test on. Enable true. So if you had an individual that was coming into a system and they, let's say you had someone for an extended period leave of time, you can actually disable them from right here. Their naming and all their credentials would still be in the system, but you can actually just take them out. So and then at any time, click on to enable without deleting them out of the entire system. The other one is you can do here where it expires on. So if you have like a commissioning agent or a balance or someone who's on your system for a short period of time and you want to be able to have them have full rights to the system or whatever you want to do, you can come in here, you can put an expires on date, and you can set up expires date with a time to be able to allow them on or off the system during that period of time. The rest of the information is things we don't really typically change on the system. One is you can go in here and say your auto log off. So auto log off is true, and mine will log off at every 15 minutes. This is one we get with a lot of people who like hate the auto log off. If I have it on my screen, I want it to stay on all the time. You can just turn the auto log off, uncheck it, and it'll stay on there for the entire time you have the screen going. The 15 minutes is that if you're inactive at any time, or no mouse movement on that at any time, it's going to go in, it's going to log you off, and you have to log back in. So you can take that out of the system if you want. So the password, this is where we set the password. Now this is where I say 10 characters, 1 numeric at least, and 1 special character at all times. So that makes it a strong password. So special character, we'll put parentheses, and then I'll ask you to confirm again. The email, we ask you to put your email in there because when it comes into a situation where, like, if we're asked to put the alarming and stuff like that in there and it's to send out alarms to you, we, instead of bugging you for the email address, if you have it in here, we can actually add you as a user to be able to send alarms out or anything like that. So, cell phone, same thing. You can send out, on this system, you can send out alarms that'll go to text messages or emails, whatever you want it to do. So we ask for your cell phone provider to be put in there. Cell phone number and the provider. So if you're a Verizon, make sure you put in there that it's Verizon because we have to add an ending column of like VTEX in there, or if it's US Cellular, it's uscc.com, and then you'll be able to send the alarms out through the system. The nav, obviously you can change the fastest format to metrics or English to depending on where you're at. We have some pharmaceutical companies where we have to change everything. We program it all in Fahrenheit. We have to duplicate it, change it all to Celsius to be able to read your standards. I don't know if you have any of that with Tech or not.
Yeah, all of our pharmaceuticals through Johnson.
Okay. But do they have to go Celsius instead? So same scenario, we program it all. We can, and from here, when you're in that program, you can view everything from Fahrenheit, and then when anyone else views it, they see it from Celsius. So that's kind of cool. This is the nav file. So the nav file is what's our splash screen that goes to. So when I type in my username and my password, where does it launch us to? And that's what our nav file is established here. And if you can see here, I have this nav, then I got a .px users. You can add a bunch of different nav files in there. So we were talking before is that perhaps you have Permar that does your security for your facility, and you only want that Permar guy to be able to see one graphic, and that's the history or the alarming page. You would create a separate PX nav file that would launch him only to that graphics, and then he couldn't go anywhere else. I mean, he would view that, that's his main screen he logs into, and that's it. You wouldn't want to do that. Or you could set it up where you have a screen where you have part of your building is pharmaceutical. You can access it so one part of that building can only see the 2 rooftop units and they don't see any other piece of equipment. So based on this, on the PX pages and then nav files, this is where you can direct people to certain graphics that you don't want them to see or you want them to see. Click OK. And there you go. That's as easy as it is to add a new user. questions on adding users or? And then, like I say, you want them out of there? Actions? You can remove right here.
So like, we've got a situation where we have our jailers log in and adjust temperatures.
Yep.
Which we're okay with, but we want to take other admin rights away from them, like making users and moving to other advanced settings and configurations and stuff. So how would we limit that? But so we have access to just like, see temperatures and change temperatures.
So for that scenario like here, so this is where we go in here and I exit this all the way back to mode. So what I'm gonna do is I can do it two ways. I'll change it from a graphical viewpoint. So I can go to edit right here. So I just took this all the way back to view mode and hit edit, and you can see we're gonna load here. So this kind of ties in with the username and password we were just discussing. So when we pulled up that, before we started going into the graphics, you remember we pulled up that Envysion touchscreen, and here's our style manager, here's our navigation builder, page creator and viewer. So we were able to pull up in there. We're in the Envysion graphic program right now. So one option I can do in here, and this is usually done during setup, so this isn't something I see all of us in here doing. I'm not trying to get sidetracked, but I can go in here and click on that little bar there, and I go to permissions. And you can see that I can go down here, and I can see, you remember how we have the advanced, the users? Those are things that you're saying you don't want this individual to be doing, right?
Right.
So what I do is I can go in here and I can say, when I go into, I only want them to see Rooftop Unit 1, Rooftop Unit 2, and I don't care if they're able to see 3 or 4, but I do want them to be able to see the unit heater, and I do need him to schedule. Those are the only things he will see in the system when he gets logged into it. So he won't be able to view the floor plan, he won't be able to do anything else on it. The only thing he's able to see is he'll be able to navigate 2 and 3 rooftop units, and he'll be in the tree on the left-hand side, so probably some of you are like, well, how's he gonna get to it? The graphic kind of thing kind of takes away, and when it comes to a blank splash screen, and you'll have rooftop unit 1, rooftop 2 on the left-hand side, and you have to click on those values. That's a way you can limit those individuals from getting in there to do history, resetting histories, resetting alarms, adding new users, and gets them out of that equation.
Also, I see you drug it in like 1 unit at a time. Can we go one folder up on that tree there? Like, so let's say I wanted to be able to have all that, but maybe not the lighting. Could I grab just the, yes, like that?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And then you've expressed out of that main folder, we've expressed that we only want them to be able to see these 3 underneath that. Everything else would not be able to show up on it.
What's to prevent him from going into the advanced settings?
Well, one, he needs to know how to get it, because you have to know how to edit the, there's certain restrictions that we can lock it out so they can't get into that, and we can put a password on there. We leave that one open, because if you need to go in there and do any program changes.
They're not gonna know to back it up and type in edit and get it on the page.
What about like a web page developer? Would he know to do that?
He's gonna know more than you and me anyway, so when it comes to that stuff. We'll come back into this one a little bit later, but this is where we were going into the sites. So you can see I can flip between any type of mode of site. So like if I'm creating everything for Woodman, but let's say I might have Camp Dodge or Air National Guard, I could immediately flip to their screen and show that their colors and stuff like that are associated with the building. Like we were talking before, we were at Camp Dodge, take the Woodman out of there and just put your value. This is where you make all those changes on the graphics. But I'll jump into this a little bit after we get through going through all the navigation and stuff like that and show you how to make those changes. I wasn't trying to sidetrack, it was just, you asked a question that really pertained to username and passwords to be able to get in there.
Yep, I got everything I need. I just need you guys to be able to let us do this, because I think we're good now. Let's move it.
The other thing is when you get into some of this, and I'll pull up, again, not to get sidetracked too much, but we're going in here to advanced settings. Then we go down into drivers, services. and category services, this is where you can get in and you can define what types of services they're able to do on the system and make the changes for it. So you can see we got the WCC admin. What are the see out here on the other one, we also have the other users here. So we have the advanced setting we get to, we can also get to the users directly from right here. Now when you go to the, are any of you on the demo? Or were you on the demo? Did you see this part of it? The demo login. So then on the login, that's where we can dictate whether they can go into that page or not. All right, so let's go. So we've gone through the drop-down tree with the temperatures and that. We've gone through the real time. Let's go into the equipment and pages now on it. So obviously you can point, click, and go to any piece of device you want on the system, right? But you can also go to it here on the tree. So if we click on the actual devices, this is the way your equipment is. All of you are going to look a little bit different because all of you have different pieces of equipment out there, right? There's a couple ways over here. If you look, if you drop down the arrow down under there, you can see that there's rooftop unit 1 stat. On this one, I can see this 2 spots. I can go to there. Now, while we're looking at the graphics, because we talked about this can be put on your phone, it's really hard to change the set points and stuff like that from the phone with the whole air handling piece of equipment. So you can click on the thermostat, and you can see from here you can do an up-down. So if you were to click on the demo site and you click on the actual thermostat here, this is where you could actually click the up-down to maybe making adjustments from there. You could also click under the tree here, that stat. We'll always have the trends and the alarms underneath each one of them as well. So let's go back up to here. So we got here, we got the typical, back to the floor plan, which is going to bring us all the way back to our home screen, which is the same. Yeah.
Your drop down right there on your HVAC space temp, where you got the options there.
I'm sorry.
Right there where it says space temperature, you can drop down and select different things on the page right there to your right. Right, keep going down a little bit.
These HVAC system.
Yeah.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, the one with the set point or something, you had something with set point?
Yep.
We don't have that, can we have that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a la carte.
It's not on.
I want one of everything.
One of everything.
Speaking of that,
So, the trends and alarms are something you'll see on all of the pages on here. We've really tried to get away from like having the tabs along the top, so we don't do the tabs like we're used to seeing on some of your other systems where you have them on top. We try to put everything on this one screen because the way that the system is that the less boxes you have, the larger the screen gets. The more information you put on the page, the more it stretches it out, so it automatically configures the page for it. So you can imagine if I had if I started dropping a bunch of points on here, the air handler and all the information is going to get really small and it's going to look that small from your phone or anything like that. But when you put it as little information on the page as possible, we can actually make the equipment look a little bit bigger. Now, we've had some where everyone wants set points and they want tons of trends and stuff like that. In that case, then we have to put more of these drop counts in place on them. So each one of them you can see right here is we've got the alarm scenario too. If you drop down that tab underneath the circles, like the 3 circles here, that'll drop you down into the alarms that you have on the system. So the beauty part about the Envysion and the N4 is that as you add a history or an alarm, the minute that you drop that extension in there, it auto-populates that. So you don't have to come back in here and re-add and reprogram it for a graphic. If I add an alarm extension to a point that says, hey, I want it to be a change of value on mixed air temperature, the next time you come back in there, that's going to auto-populate and it's going to be added as another alarm on there. And you can see, let me go to here, if you click on any one of them, if they're in red, we'll go to one that's in red, they'll pull up in red. But if you click on the value as in green, this is where we can either enable or disable the alarm on that particular zone. We can go in there and say, hey, what is our alarm trigger point? 76 being the high, 10% being the low. And then we can put in our on and off delays. the majority of problems you have with the system and alarms is you get alarm fatigue, right? You get so many alarms, you're like, piss on it, I'm done, I'm never gonna look at it again. So I'm trying to get rid of that, and a lot of the times is when they're always usually set up is that they have 0 time delay on, 0 time delay off, so the minute they go on alarm, they trigger, the minute they go off, they go. So you constantly are getting this all the time. And that's what we put in all the delays in there. So when they come out, they should have at least a 5 to 10 minute, 5 minute on delay, 5 minute off delay. So there is that little buffer zone that's in there. And so if you're getting like a bunch of the nuisance alarms, we'll try to weed them out a little bit with the alarm delay on or off. And the changing of them, all you gotta do is click on them, and you can arrow up or down.
So what about an instance where we have 2 geo pumps and only one runs at a time and then they cycle out? So we always get an alarm that the one pump is in failure. No, it's just off.
That's because you don't have a long time delay in there then. Because it has to, both pumps are gonna run at the same time, right? Is that what goes on yours, or do they automatically flip over?
One runs at a time and then as one ramps down, the other one ramps up.
Okay.
But it's in pump failure, like whatever pump's not on is in pump failure.
Yeah, so that has to be changed, because what it needs to do is look like the alarm on that one is, what's my command versus my status? And if my command comes off first and my status is a little bit delayed, then it's gonna give you an alarm saying you have a mismatch of commands. You commanded it off, but the status stayed on for, even if it's a second, it's gonna be able to trigger that alarm, which is why this is where you look at the alarm page and we'll go into there. If you have 176 alarms on one piece of the device, that's where we know we have a problem with it. That doesn't, more than likely doesn't have a timer. And when we start looking at the alarm in and out of the alarm, you'll see it's a minute alarm. Well, think about it. If you have 176 alarms and you put a 5-minute on delay and a 5-minute off delay, which means it has to be an alarm for 5 minutes and it has to be normal for 5 minutes before it clears out, you're going to eliminate 90% of those alarms.
So bump up and try that.
Bump up the time delay. And a lot of times, yours might be based strictly on pressure too. It might be, so like on pumps, we dictate sometimes that it's based on the pressure has to be met at set point above this to be able to sell this in a flow. So it could be one of the others. If you increase the time delay, or at least put time delay in there, you'll probably solve one of those problems.
We were thinking about the same way in the alarm, but we're like, well, okay, if pump actually goes, one of the pumps goes into failure, we want to know.
Right. If you have any problem, like for example, let's say I have a space temperature alarm, or let's say I got a CO2 sensor that's bad, and I know I have a bad CO2 sensor, I'm just not able to get to fixing it. We can actually go in there and disable, and you can see it's graded out there. It's not going to go into alarm. It's an indication for you to know that you've actually physically, manually taken it out of the alarm equation, so you'll never see it again at that point until it gets fixed.
Can you put those into a time delay? I mean, like, let's say you want to change that,
Let's
the
say
amount of time
days
you were, like right now my children's down, you know,
To change it. We can't put it into,
you put it as a permanent, you know, like lengthen the time out right now. It's,
yeah, you could lengthen the time of it out, but you can't just physically go here and say, I want this to be disabled for, I mean, there's a timer in there, so this has got a timer in there, well, it'll disable the time, and it'll go back to enable after 5 minutes, or 20 minutes, it'll go back into enable. There's that timer in there, but it's not like, it's not like, you don't ever put it on there.
Stretch it out.
All the equipment, like I said, when we're talking about the graphics and stuff like that, if you should see that they should all be in green. If we have any of them that are in, let me see if I have any of those in. I'm going to override this one. So I'm going into override. I want to throw it into, first of all, let's see who's off the system. I always like to know a little more. So it's a sales guy.
Hey, don't mess with us.
We can really put the screws in now. So we can override this value, and we're going to put it into a heat mode
There we go.
of 100%. And I can say permanently, or you can see that I can set up, so let's say I'm just doing testing on that piece of equipment. And I can put it in there for, how long we got left? Let's go on an hour now. We'll be- Okay, you can see now everything that was green, we have one area that is in purple showing us we're in an overridden mode from the system. To clear any of them out, You just click on auto and it'll take it out. I'm gonna leave it on there for a little, we'll see if it starts working. Shows us the available stages we have on the heating and cooling system. Now, like I said, your pieces of equipment, each one of them is gonna be a little bit different depending on what you have in the system. So we have one stage of heat. This should start ramping up the heating and we should start seeing this kick on, which we just did right there. Now, for our troubleshooting, essentially what we're looking for is, we were at 72 degrees, our return air temperature is 71. We want to see an increase of this discharge air temperature. If we don't see an increase on that, we can get another alarm for our discharge air temperature not increasing because we have a heating call. You can also get an alarm for the discharge air temperature not decreasing if you have a call for a cooling. So the minute we have this heating stage activated and our discharge air temperature is not increasing to be able to match our discharge air set point, it's going to give you a trigger on there. It's going to give you an alarm on there. See if that starts to increase. I'll repeat this with, like I said, in the as-built, same thing goes with the graphics. If stuff does not look right on your graphics or is not working, you need to let us know so we can fix any of the graphic stuff, because there is many people in this, maybe not this room, but what we deal with, that this is their only visual cue of knowing anything about HVAC, right? Is that I need to know, like, if that fan is spinning, I need to be verifying that that fan is spinning. If that coil turns red, I need to know that that coil is heating. You know what I mean? It's got to correlate with that individual. So, and the same thing with us is that if these graphics look right, this makes it easier to diagnose for anyone when they're calling me and they have problems with it. Is that, hey, I'm asking you, the heating coil, is it red? What's the heating and cooling percentage? Is it purple anywhere? I mean, these are the kind of questions that you get asked by our service guys. Is they're asking you questions, is anything overridden, what's our discharge? So, yeah, we're starting to cook them out a little bit. Who's in there today, Joe?
And where?
The office.
Pox is out, actually nobody.
Nobody.
Steve is in there
So I'm
probably.
doing this for nothing.
Steve's in there, I think Jenny.
Yeah, but if I heat that room up, that affects my office too, and I'm right next to it. And I got some candy sitting on my desk, and I don't need that getting all Yeah. All right, so what we could do is, remember, we put on there, we put a timer of 100 minutes, but what I could do then at any point is I can cancel, I can come up here, right click on it, or left click on it, and go to auto, and it'll clear back out. We're right under. So overriding a point is very easy to be able to do in the system, and to be able to get it back to normal, not a problem at all. One of the things I want to talk about when we come here is, we had the conversation when I first came in here, is by cooling and by heating and cooling set points, and there's just kind of understanding what they are, because we get questions on this all the time. It doesn't matter if it's Envysion or if it's that. This is our so we have our cooling set point is 74.5 and 71.5. It's the same over here. So when we say active set points, that is our effective set point. That is what we are trying to maintain in the room to achieve. So we want to be at 71.5 to 74.5. Well, this is where we call our dead band in there. Unlike your home systems, unless you got some really fancy home systems, these systems automatically flip back and forth the heating and cooling. And so you have to have a dead band in there to be able to give you that buffer zone to be able to switch back and forth between heating and cooling, which is why we have the 74.5 to 71.5. That's our effective. This is our setup in here, and this is where we set up that dead band value. So we have in here right now a maximum adjustment of 4 degrees on there. So that's telling us is that from the thermostat, you're giving them 4 up and 4 down. So from a 72.5 midpoint, because remember we're 71.5 and 74.5, so our midpoint is 72.5 is what we want to be in there. And what we're going to do is you're giving the ability to go up or down 4 degrees from that set. And you can adjust it. If you do not want to give them any values from there, this is how you can lock an individual out. Take the 4, put it to 0. Grab a bag of popcorn and watch them try to adjust that thermostat all day long, and it doesn't do anything for them. So, yep. So take the set point adjustment away from you. Just drive that set point max adjustment to 0, and then it will only be done from the graphics, which you have set up right there, and then you can adjust any of these values from that.
Yeah, the best part is they push the button anyway.
Yeah, that's why I say you just gotta sit back.
I'll watch them on the cameras.
How does that work on integration?
Same.
On integration?
Yeah.
So it just depends on what, like, they're all different, but some of them call it, I mean, if they're dead man value, if they're set point adjustment, it's the maximum value, the minimum value, just, they're all names, but you do the same thing, you take that adjustment over there. On integrations, a lot of times you have to do it right back to it, so you can't, just the last call wins, so an LG system is a typical example, is that the last person who touched the thermostat wins. You can set it up when you see the adjustment out in space, where it's right back to where you had it before, or put a delay in it where it writes back after you're done through the system.
That's probably.
Now, is that in the controller itself,
What's that?
your set points?
Yeah,
How about if you, even if you, like you said, put it to 0 and you control it strictly from the graphics?
then you can control it from the graphics and they can't do anything from the thermostat out in space.
Because one of the minor things we run into is we do a lot of generator tests.
Yep,
So when you do a complete power up on the controller that's powered from the air handler or heat pump with us a lot of times, it defaults back to whatever the thermostat is set at for
Yeah.
the last read, but then again, it's a different product too, so.
yeah, so this is your fallback, so when you program them, there's certain fallback values that are put in the controller, and you can set it up so my fallback value is always 7470, and you give them the ability to have 0 adjustments. That, upon a power restart, it's gonna go back and do exactly what you have in that scenario.
Because otherwise, until the comm from the boss gets back out to it and plays catch up, it's sitting there. We might have it set at 70 degrees, but they have it set at 65.
Yeah.
So on a power up, it goes right into ice chilled cooling. And
they
as
have
soon as
that
it gets
setting.
calm back, okay, now it's cold in the room, so we gotta go back into heating.
Yeah. It should go back to the value you had set in there unless you had a reset of the whole controller, and then it would go back to the default values within the controller. So we had the same problem with the jail, and they do generator testing, but they didn't have anything on generator power. So when it would shut down, it would do exactly what you're saying. But we set a
Very
program.
few of ours are on generator.
Yeah, well, most of them are, to be honest with you. So override values, anything, got any concerns, questions on overriding any of these? Any concerns on the temperatures or set points and stuff like that? Does that make sense to everyone? On how the thermostats work on there? Because that's really what we get the biggest fault on here, like knowing that the larger the deadband and then the more savings you are getting for your company. The tighter the deadband, the greater control you're giving to the customer or the people in the building, but you're spending more money doing that because you're actually trying to control to a tighter band on there. So it's give and take, so it's completely up to you guys. You might have some buildings where I want a larger deadband value of 4 degrees and others where you want a really narrow deadband value.
You know, my office is 1 degree, 1.5,
1.5.
but my production area is 4.
Yeah, and you probably even go more because what happens
Yeah.
when we get into
I'll
this
let you guess
mode
what
right
pays my
here,
bill.
we're at the 0% heating and cooling demand, we're drifting. We're not doing anything, it's just whatever minimum value is coming through the outdoor and whatever's coming in through the return is what we're bringing through there. We don't do anything until it starts getting above that 74, below that 70 value. And once we start eclipsing those values, then that's when we go into heating or cooling mode. And then otherwise we shift out of it from that point. You can also go here and do the override. So we can override the schedules. Occupied. Kind of what's this thing. Should shut down. So in our occupied mode, depending on what your sequence operations in your building is, typically here's what should happen is the fan should shut off. We don't want to go close to the outdoor air damper. And we should be going to a fallback temperature, so like we did here, 78 and 60 degrees, we went to the unoccupied temperatures. We did not change this here. This is still our occupied value, so keep that in mind is that we don't typically, or we have not been typically putting the unoccupied set points on the graphics. Is that something you guys think definitely needs to be put in there? Is that just once you put it in, our thought was, once you put it in the standard, why change it again? What you guys have thought on that?
Mine are actually in there. I had Jason put them in.
And you want?
Yeah, I wanted them.
Anybody else, or
I would like to.
what's that?
I would like to say
As long as you know where to find them sometimes.
Yeah, then
That's the problem is on here,
Then
you have to dig in the programming to get them, and that's why.
Because we actually had arguments with the software that between this, we broadened them out because of the heat pump, it might overshoot, it might undershoot, and it's fighting itself. So we start sticking that deadband out, and then it got into the nighttime setback, where the nighttime setback was controlling it instead of the local.
Okay. So I'm getting kind of overwhelming, we want it on the graphics.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see this is our scenario that goes on our unoccupied, and again, it's gone from a 78 to 68, from a 70 to 74. Now what'll happen is that when we're in this value, we will not turn on the fan or do any heating until we get above or below those values. The fan will turn on, it'll start to warm up or cool down the space. Once it's got a degree above that, it'll bring itself back down and shut back down, and then it'll just, that cycle starts all over all night until it goes back into an occupied mode. There's another mode some of you might have when you go in there, and when you see it in our set point changes, and it'd be like bias mode. And this would be like if you were unified into the automation system and you were looking at the occupancy sensor, and that was running in conjunction with your HVAC system. So if we were using the occupancy sensor, you'd see a bias set point value. And what that does is, like, you're typically running, right, you're running 70, 74. If we have it in using the occupancy sensor in the room, the bias set point would fall back just a little bit further. So for 70, 74 during occupied and all that system, and we are tied in with the occupancy sensor, when that occupancy sensor is seen that someone's left the room for 30 minutes, it's going to go in unoccupied mode, right? But we're still during a regular working day. But, so what we do is we take that 70, 74, and we might go 68, 76, and let it just fall back to those values. Shut the fan off, let the air just kind of drift in there, or we keep the fan going depending on what we want. And then as someone walks back in, and in schools, this is the big savings in schools, right? Because you got teachers that go for recesses, they're going for, they switch rooms. So if you have that occupancy sensor, then you fall back 2 degrees either direction. So instead of, it went from a 4-degree deadband to a 60-degree deadband, just based on the occupancy sensor, and it shuts off the fan and doesn't do anything, and you do that for an hour every day, 365 days a week. I mean, you can see the savings that you get. So when you see some of these set fans, they'll have a bias value. That's what's going on, is based on the occupancy sensor. On each tab right here, you can see on each one of them, I'll always have like a trend value with them. So this is just usually what we put on every graphic, is that we'll have what we think is important. And usually it's the occupied heating, occupied cooling, and the temperature together. And you can see putting them together, then what we're essentially is we're trying to see it go unoccupied, and we're trying to see is our temperature come in there, and as we go occupied, is it staying within that 2 degree or 4 degree, or whatever we have for deadband value in there. And you see that on almost every page. So when we get ready to start creating a report here in a little bit, you'll see these are just the CAN values that are on each one of the pieces of equipment.
Yeah, I've got one that's a VAV system, I've probably got 10 points on it.
Oh, on trends?
Oh, yeah.
The one that
The
Vance,
one from my office, yeah, Vance did for me.
he's a trending machine. He loves
is.
them.
Boy, when I told him I wanted one, I mean, it gives me my duct pressure, static pressure.
And for an example like here, it's a pretty simple trend that's on the page, but it's pretty effective, because when you look at it, you're wanting to make sure that we're staying, all we're trying to do is stay within those 2 parameters, right? We're trying to stay within those boundaries. If we're not, that's where we need to see, we got to change the PID programming, or we got to make some adjustments, what we got to do with it. But every one of them have, and I'll show you how we can do additional trends in addition to that one, so. We'll release everything. All right. So we have alarms on each one of the pages, we have trends on each one of the pages, and you can override any one of the graphics from there. Now, we do not give you the ability to override any inputs. We don't want you overriding space temperatures to fool out the heating or cooling. We figured you manually do that, because we start getting to that, people forget about it, and we start chaosing some major chaos.
Set point offsets.
Set point offsets. We do, yeah, we don't do any of that stuff. If you got a sensor that's bad, and you have to do it, change it out. I mean, there should be anywhere where you have to go like a 2 degree offset to be able to get within calibration mode. Just replace the sensor. That's what we look Any questions on the zones and stuff like that that you ran into, or you have any problems with on the actual graphics information? Good. So we'll go to the histories next. So we talked about the graphics and stuff like that in each one. You have a history on each one of them. Now, at any point, we can add more histories to any one of those pages. That's just us canning it out of the box. What do we do with it? Now, there's two of them that we have on there. There's one just for reports, and there's one called charting. And they both operate a little bit differently. So the reporting, you can see, is we're creating a report or a trend that's going to be in there all the time. Whenever I pull up, I'm always going to have this rooftop unit 1 trend. And there's my trend for rooftop unit 1. If I want to go in there and I want to look at my space tent, that one's always in there. So every time you go back to this page, that'll always be there. Now, any of you that are familiar with the R2 and the AX, you have to create your trend all the time, right? You had to go in there, you drag each one of them in there, and they were in there. You have that ability, and that's in the charting. So you still have that capability for you guys that like to use the old type. I do too, because I don't need to have a report created all the time. Sometimes I just want to look at 2 random values to see what they came up to be. So I'll show you how we do a first one, a report. So you can see there's a report up here, and there's one down here. There's a sample report there, and there's one down below. When I create a report, you can see that it brings up the box right here, and we have 3 different boxes. Over on the right-hand side, you're going to determine what kind of trending outlook you want to be. Do I want to have 2 trends up and down? Do I want to have 3 in a box? What do I want? For what I'm doing right now, I'm just going to create 1 trend and hit the apply. And you can see the next thing you got to pull over is going to be the charts. You can see when I pulled the charts over, I got the ability to do a line chart, a chart area, chart column. I have a variety of different types of charts I want to do. I'm just going to keep it simple, and I'm going to drag in just a regular chart. Okay, so you have to create in your report, you have to do those first 2 steps because nothing else will work after that. The next to is you can see when it came up with that, it gave me this configuration project. So we're so used to, this is where we need to break ourselves and think about this, is that we're used to dragging history, right? So AX, R2, any of those, you went down here and you drug in a history on there and put it in there. We don't do that on these ones anymore. You can do it 2 ways. One is you can come in here and go to the configuration. Oops. And drivers, and you can go actually to the controller. So we go down here rooftop unit 1, and I can actually pull in just the points now. And then I can go in there and pull any of those values I want in there as well. So I can go in here and space CO2, and drag it in, space humidity, space temp, and you can drag it in there. And a little bit different than we used to do it, right? So now in here, I can go in here, I can set up how I want my trend to be. I can, if I want to just be, let's just do 2 days. Click OK. There's my 2 days worth of value, and it puts it in there. So a little bit different than we used to do them, right? So now when I save, you can see it's going to ask me to name it. And then the last one, it says for global. If I do not check this, then if I check it and it goes to blue, that means everyone that logs into this system will be able to view this trend. If I uncheck it, it only means when I log in under my username and password, I'm the only one who can see these trends. So I can set myself up for a bunch of different categories I like to have and not flood the whole system with trends. And then when Jeremy comes into the system, he doesn't see all my trends. He's like, what's all this? I don't know what the garbage he's doing. You can set up your own trends to do the same thing. So you can either set it for global or not just by picking that value. And so I'm going to put that one global. Now let's go back. And you can see it dropped down here. These are all the ones that public can see. and these are only the ones that you can see. Other cool thing is they're really easy is we can go here to pop out, and you can see it start flipping it into a CSV immediately right here. And it'll give us a file then immediately that's in there. There you go. And so some of the problems we had before when we were trying to do, remember on the old R2 or AI stuff, is that when you tried bringing in multiple reports, you couldn't do it, you had to do a separate line for each one of the CSVs, right? You couldn't combine them all together, they made it so you can export it pretty easily that way. I can edit here. And we can then change anything we want on here. I can go in here and I can change out and add another trainer. That's a report. So the reports are really pretty easy to do. You know the exact point you want to go to. You can drag it in there and put it in there for a report or anything like that. Any questions on the reports or anything I didn't cover? You were talking before. Let's see if I can write. The other thing is in here in these ports, you can drag left click and you can narrow in on an area.
Hey, expand it back out.
There you go.
That was my question.
Right click. You see me? Here, right click. And it brings it right back out to the value you're at. So if you wanted to narrow in on an area, sure can find out what's going on with it. You can also highlight over there each one of them and it'll actually tell you what timestamp was on there, temperature, everything like that.
We shrank them up and could never get them to go back. Piss me off.
We'd always go back to the side and like re-click on the, we were on a certain room.
So I will tell you one thing on there because I believe I was with you guys maybe once. Maybe it was when we were doing training. Remember we had the problem with we were on the right-hand corner of that screen and we were like, how can you get to the auto? We were just going through this the other day and I was like, I hate this one. You do not have to necessarily be on this side of the screen to make that change. You see how I'm doing that? I can go over here and make the changes, and you can see now I have the auto. So that's one thing, because we caught this when we were out doing training, is if you try to go over here to the far right-hand side, it crowds all of the override values to it. And when you try to go over here, you can't get to the auto. So if I try to go, you see I can't get to the auto because I've been on that side. You just got to X out, come over here to the far left of it, and you can see then it gives you the ability that you can still do the override, but then you can actually go down to the auto. So
I think that did that when you were with us too.
I'll tell you, there's a couple of sites and I was getting really pissed off, to be honest with you.
You don't have to be on the green circle.
No, it can be anywhere along that name of this whole line down here. So it does not need to be here. So if you're ever having a problem and it's always crowded to the right-hand side, just scroll all the way over to the name portion of it and do your changes from there.
Sometimes it's the little things you get at your training seminars that make a difference.
See, if it was anything, great food, and I learned how to override a point what's in the corner. Win-win, boys, win-win.
It was a productive day.
All right, any other questions on reports or anything like that? So one thing also I talked about is that it's just like we could in AX, these can send out, we can also send out reports through the system where it'll send you out a weekly report. It's buried in the back of the program, but you can say, I want to be able to pick up this trend value, and that trend can be sent out and do a report of it, and it'll send you a report out every week, every day, whatever you want it to be. So there is a possibility of reporting in the background too. Energy meters are sent out every Monday or whatever you want it to be, so you have the ability built into the system that it can send out reports. We use them a lot for pharmaceutical refrigerators and things like that that'll send alarms out. Whatever you want to do.
And some of that, just save it to the hard drive as a file, because ours will be standalone.
Yep, you can do that as well. Yep. You can send it either way you want to do it. Just it's a nice little feature that's in there. You're doing a generator test. You want to make sure the generator test something. You can set it so it saves it to the file. The other one we're going to go in here is charting. So in the charting is, you can see on here where we were going in before, we were going to configuration. We go into this one now. Let's go down into the histories, and we can bring in then all these. So you can do a control and hit multiple ones and bring it in. Okay. And there's 3 almost exactly straight lines, so that really didn't do too much for me. Let's try this again. It looked good. Let's go for CO2. Something's got to be different. There we go. So you can see all the reports that we have in there, or all the trims we have in there now. Different colors, coordinates for each color that you want on there. I can take them out by just highlighting the box. So for some of them, take that one out. Take that one out. Then you can see it starts fitting them out, and you get that. You can bring them back in by just checking on them. And you can lay back in the system. So charting is similar to what you had before the reporting. The difference between the charting and the reporting is the charting is just a one-time scenario where it's not gonna stay with it. It's what you're kind of used to doing.
Quick glance kind of stuff.
Yeah, quick glance kind of stuff. Want to change it, you can do dates, so we can do a time range. Want to do the time range, and so I can start it that date when started at the 15th. There you go. You can do any type of those scenarios. You can do yesterday's information, so you can click at the top and put it in any range you want, last 24 hours, last 7 days, whatever you want on the charting. But again, it's different than reporting because the reporting stays in that system all the time and it's always there for you to be able to retrieve constantly at it. This would be, you're doing some just typical comparisons right now. Any questions on any of the histories or trendings or any of that stuff that I might have not covered for you that you're having problems with? You guys are an easy crowd. Yeah. The next one we'll go to is we'll go into schedules. So let me go to 4. So the schedules be on your sheet. If you drop down, you can see here's the schedule, text schedule 24/7 schedule. To change it to any schedules, just click on it. And you can see now we've changed to that particular schedule. So on your graphics, you'll see just the schedule right here. When you see the drop downs, click on any one of those and you can go to any of the schedules you want. So I click on the regular schedule, and that's at the equipment level now. So that's only when you're at the equipment for that drop down to be able to get you that schedule. Now we go over to the schedules over here on the left-hand side. So one thing we're used to in the old system, and I'll try to, since I have so many AX guys, we'll try to coordinate to. You're used to the trees at the top, right, which have all your schedules and stuff like that over here. Over here on the new N4, it's over here on the You'll have the drop down where it goes to the extra schedules, whether this will we do not. So that's in our demo. We have to make sure that we have all 4 schedules on. Yeah, in the demo. You'll typically have a drop down and you'll have schedules, 24/7 schedules here too. It's obviously not in this one, but we'll go through the schedules anyways. So once you've created your schedule from the graphic, from that mechanical piece of equipment, whether that be a VAV box, area or whatever, you can come over here into the schedule, weekly schedule, and again, it's as easy as drag, drop and drag. So we can go in here, put this to occupy, and you can see you can drop and drag whatever values you want into the schedule. This is really no different than the way it was before, so there's not too much difference between it. For the air guard who's never had any of it, probably looks a little bit different, right?
Same thing as the,
Same thing you're used to. Oh, that's right, you have.
yeah, it's just that we just usually run through the browser instead of through the manager.
Through the guy.
Yeah.
You can still do the same thing. Again, everything I'm showing here, you can still go into the background of it and do all those changes as well. So some people are really familiar with using the background into the AX portion of it, others, to be honest. so it just kind of depends on what works best for you. So you drop down, make any changes like that, we go to a special event. We can make a test event. Say I want it to be the date range of every year, and I want it to be, you can see it just went up there, did that whole scenario. Let's go in here and make a change to this one. Let's just say I want it to. You can see it filled in that date range that entire time and ended at the 6th. So, at any point, you can take it out, delete it, and you go right back to where it was scheduled. So special events are really easy. If you know, especially schools and stuff like that, if you know like your gyms and stuff like that, instead of having to go there and go in there and turn it on, if you do your event calendar, you could spend a couple hours, go in there, fill out your whole schedule, call it done, and you're completed. The biggest thing to remember is when you're doing a special event is that you have to make sure that you set the side value here to be occupied or unoccupied, or else it's not going to set. You need to make sure that you put a value in there when you do a flood. And we put some event in there. You need to make sure that you set it in here or it will not work at all. And then also, if you call and you have a problem with one of your schedules, I ask the first thing to do is look at the special event and make sure you don't have something that's snuck in there.
Would you have to save it also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's into this once in a while too.
Yes. And you see right there, the button at the top, that's your save button on it. I'm going to clear that out. Yeah, we get a lot of calls from customers that have changed their schedules and they don't hit the save button, and then they're like reaming me up and down that something didn't work, and I'm like, did you hit the save? And I'm like, what save? The one that asks you before you close out of it if you did it. Summary will tell you in here if you have any special events that were going on in the date, and then it'll actually tell you the timestamp and things like that. If I wanted to go back to one day, like here at 8, let's go back to October 1st, you can see if we had in what time we started or what time we stopped during that day. So back in the summary page, you can go backwards through events too to see what you had in there for schedules in those days. So.
Needs an option to pick up holidays.
Huh?
Needs an option to pick up holidays.
That's what your special event is.
Oh.
So you can go in there, if we go in here in special events, and I just want to say, let's say July 4th, and I want that to be a date, and
No, I don't want to have to go to all that work. I want to just get a button where it says, unoccupied on holidays, federal holidays.
well, I don't know what kind of building you have, so like, I have to work on federal holidays, you guys might have it off, so. I don't have that smart of a building system on there right now.
But you could do standard December 25th, January 1.
Yep, you do that all through the
For
special events, and then you do any, don't pick any date on there, and every year that will fall on there, we'll do it every single year, the same. So if you have 7 holidays that were definitely closed during there, you make that a special event, those 7 holidays will be unoccupied from those events. And so if the special event holiday happens to fall, let's say on a Tuesday, and your normal schedule during a Tuesday is on, what happens is the special event trumps it. And it'll say, okay, I'm off because you made a special event, even though it's Monday, and it's a typical schedule day, my special event's gonna shut you off, and it's gonna be unoccupied during that day. And then the next day, it'll revert back to normal operation.
Gotcha.
Schedules.
But that wouldn't work on Memorial Day or Labor Day or.
Not unless you put them in there.
You'd have to manually do that.
You have to manually put them in there. So like I say, if you had 7 particular days that you had to put in there, you could put them in there and they would always follow the suit of your building.
Sure. Okay.
We don't put any of them in there because Steve makes us work all the time, so we were like.
Those schedules run off the clock on the case?
Yes.
So where to see the time date stamp on the case?
Yep. One thing is you have on here, let's go to Any questions anyone else had on schedule or anything like that? If we give the ability to see it from
The schedule,
Huh?
the building is scheduled because the time is wrong.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if we can do it from right here. We used to have on the top right hand the actual time that was running on all of it, and we don't put that on there anymore, but that might be.
Yeah, you should do that.
Well, we did it in our server with the R2 stuff, is you could look on the server and see all the, what we did time sinks
Yeah.
on the server, and then you can see all your Jaces, all your buildings with the time date stamp, and you can see if anything is offline. If anything didn't communicate back with the server.
That's definitely something we should add to it. When you're talking about the time thing, though, that's not a bad idea that I bring this up right now.
Burn is that, or that work?
Yeah, actually, I just want to see what I had to, you started with J's because.
So you can see
Time I was
right.
off and it was like screwed, it thought the building was unoccupied.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can add that, I mean, that's a good idea to add to the system. One of the things that now they're talking about time is, a lot of you have these smart thermostats out there, these ones, right? And if you have them out there, you'll notice a lot of times the time isn't matching with what's going on, so you run into that. The way to do that is, when you go into the BACnet Discover, if you hit a time sync will take the network manager time and push it right to that and it'll sync the two together. So that's one way of doing it, but we can run the graph.
Does that sync the whole network with multiple bosses?
No, this is just within that box. Now, you could do a web supervisor. If you had a web supervisor on the system and you did a sync with it, it would synchronize all of them. Yes.
Because that's the way ours is set up, with multiple buildings, each one has its own
Yeah,
office.
as long as you have a web supervisor in there that's talking to the Niagara platforms of all of them, then if you did a sync, it would sync all of them.
Ours would probably be synced off the server.
Yeah.
At least that one.
Okay. Anything on schedules that I didn't cover or anything like that? So drop, and you're in the equipment for the schedules, you drop in the, you go into the equipment, you pick the drop down. You click the drop down you want it to go to.
What's the exact schedule? 92?
Yes, 9 a.m. to 2 in the morning. We were talking about 24/7. So just to go through any of that stuff, so if there's nothing more in histories and stuff, in schedule like that, I'll go right into the alarming if you guys are all right with that. But just to recap, the schedules is you do the drop down right at the piece of equipment, pick the schedule you want, and then you would go to the schedule page, and then you would go ahead and pick 24/7, whatever the 3 schedules you happen to have, or if you have 4. By default, we typically put 4 of them in there, 24/7, or 3 of them in there, 24/7, schedule 1, schedule 2. So if you want more in there, just you can add more of them after we training with you guys and just add as many as you want. We don't know coming off of the system what you actually want, so we put 3 in there to be safe, but we usually have to add more. So start at the equipment like we've done on all the rest of them before. If you can see right here, this is something new that also like I put in is that if you see this demo one has a few little extras, which is some stuff we're supposed to talk to you and see if it's things that you would like. So the drop down for the schedules has always been something everyone wants to be able to change their schedules and not have to be stuck with one schedule running all the time, right? The other thing that he added to this system is a playback of the equipment. So you could actually, you know how we just did the screens of the rooms and stuff? We can also do a playback of the equipment too, and run this equipment and see how it's actually operating. You can see how it's going through the temperatures. Is that something you guys could see being beneficial for you or no? So you could go back and set it for the last last 24 hours and see how the piece of equipment is running at 14. It's something we're thinking about incorporating into all of our graphics. I don't know if it'd be worth it, if it's worth the time, or if it's something everyone's like, nah, that's what I got history for.
Yeah.
Well, that's because we could set, right now they just have it a sample, but you could set it up for like, yeah, we could set up for like, if you had like an hour or every 10-minute or every hour increment, this is just a sample one that's running. But
You wouldn't have the option,
I don't know, just something to think about if that's something you guys think you could really use. You can see I can also slow it down just by my mouse. And I can go back and forth with it as well. I don't know. I told Ryan I would bring it up in here since it's something that you guys think you could use. If not, I just don't want to put it in there. Okay, so for the alarming, like we talked about before, you can see that we have 3 alarms in there: space temp, space heat, or we got space temp, humidity, and CO2, right? So you can also see that it went to the values here, and it went to red as well. So not only did you get the alarm cue that's flashing right there on that page, but you also got it showing up in red, where these are typically, remember, oranges or purple is overridden, orange means it's a comm failure, yellow means it's down the controller, and red means we're in an alarm. So that's what you would see on each piece of equipment. You'll have that drop down tag on there. Yeah.
I can read.
So also when we're in at the zone level, if you click on the temperature value, you go in there and you make those changes. So if 75 is my high limit, maybe I wanted to increase that. Oops. Let's go 87. So 87 to 50. And this is where you want the time delays and everything like that put in there. So you can see once I took that out of there, the alarm went away. So our space temp one alarm went away. I took the ranges from the high-low alarm, took them out of there. And again, anytime that, if you're used to programming and stuff like that, you add an extension into the alarm value or any of that stuff, that's going to add it right here on this queue automatically. It's just built into it. Anything that's getting added for an alarm or anything like that will automatically get pushed up in there. And those values will follow through to the min and maximum and the set point range, because you know if you do the programming and get the extensions that you put on there, you have to be able to set up those parameters, and that's what's followed through the controller. So you have all those values right here. It's under the drop down, and you can see all you gotta do is click on the little circles. We also have the ability to go over here when we go to the alarm systems. And here's all of it. And we'll silence the alarms because it will drive you crazy. So click on that button and it silences it. You see, this is all the alarms we have in there now. So you have the alarming available at the piece of equipment, right? And you can make all those changes and everything like that. This is what we call our alarm console. So our alarm console is where you can view everything that's gone on in the alarm in the system and when it's gone into the alarm. All alarms can be set up to be able to be viewed from the console, or we can set them up to send out to an email, a text message, whatever you guys want. So if you have that capability, keep that in mind. I wouldn't send console alarms to your phone all the time. Those would be like, your phone would blow up. What I would send them to is like, let's figure critical alarms, free stats, low boiler temperature, low discharge air temperature. Things like that is what you're going to want sent to your phones and stuff like that in your So you can see on here, we got in here, anything in green means that it's gone out of alarm and gone back to normal. If I click on that, I can go here and do an acknowledge, and you can see we cleared off that alarm. On the top right-hand side is our sources, and here's our alarms. We have 13 sources, which should be these, and we have 153 alarms out of the 13. And you can see over here on this, under the acknowledge, we're getting 134 of them from one point. So that's something we need to look at. And right now, it's the weather service. So anytime there's any critical weather alarm going out, and if you set it up so you want to be broadcast from the weather service, it'll send you an alarm. We usually take them out for that reason, that you have that many alarms going in on. So let's look at this, any alarm. If I double click on the alarm, you can see that I can see when the alarm stamp was, what was going on with it, at what time it went into alarm, and when it came back to normal. So 8:27 came out at 8:46. Probably a legitimate alarm. It's not immediately gone in and out of the alarm supply fan. And I imagine what this one was when the guy was on the roof trying to fix the heat the other day. That's what he was up there going through. The other thing I got on here is there's a notes section on here. So if you can see up here, I know it's hard to see, but you can see the little white note mark. Many of you in this building, oops, have the work with multiple facility members, right? And so a lot of times we're trying to get in there that if you're if you're working on an alarm, you don't want to be overlapping the next person who already worked on that alarm, right? So you have the ability to put a note in here. So like I put a note on here, my username and password gone into the system. So remember we talked about a unique username and password to get into the systems all the time. My username and password is put in there, and I put fan is being worked on by R&R. So that way when Colby comes in and is like, okay, I'm on, Jeremy was out sick and I'm on shift and he's not here. You can go in here to the alarm, see what's going on, and Jeremy might have been working on a piece of equipment that you came in on and you know it's a problem, but you're not recreating the wheel again. Someone's already found the problem and it's already marked on here for the notes. So that's a cool thing about the notes on the alarms, is that you can actually put a note saying, hey, I know there's a problem there, don't worry about fixing it, we're working on it. And that way you're not overlapping. And it's time stamped and everything like that. You can see I can go forward, backwards, and it's going to give me all the alarms I had on there. So of the 3 I had on there, I can go forward and backwards to see the alarms and what's going on with them. The message text, this is what they should be coming out in the alarm. I will say this is one of our struggle areas, is that we don't do a good job about naming alarms, right? A lot of times they're really vague, right? So if you have VAV box 12, does that mean anything to you? No. We don't, and that's because we know the mechanical equipment only usually, and we need to do a better job of, we could put the text in there that says this piece of equipment is VAV 12, room 127, or whatever it is. So what's one thing that we're working on internally is that when we're going through and testing stuff, is that we're making sure that our message texts go out and they really represent what piece of equipment is in the alarm. So that way you're not going out there and saying, oh, I got an alarm, I can't read any of these dang messages because they don't make any sense to me. That's something on our end we really need to start working on, and we're trying to get to that. Is that we know that when you get an alarm, you're going to want to know, I immediately go to Riptop Unit 1, I have some fire country. It's got to be that cut and dry with these alarms, or otherwise you're not going to use it. So if you're hunting around, pecking around in the page trying to find a VAV 12 and you don't even know what it is, and it's your building, it's going to do no good for us. So that's one thing that we need to really start working on ourselves, is that one. Any one of these can be acknowledged, so I can go in here, click on the acknowledge button again. I can also go here and I can do shift, and I can do a mass number of them and acknowledge them all at once too. Take out them ones and I'll be down to only, what, 4 alarms then? There we go. So these ones, I can go in there and acknowledge them, but they're not going to go away. So any of your ones in red, you can acknowledge, but they're going to continue to stay on the alarm system. They're not going to go away because they're still in alarm. You just acknowledge the fact that I know it's an alarm. Here's my problem. Okay. Any questions on alarms or anything like that?
Yeah, our page looks like this,
Oh, which one?
like this alarming page.
Yeah, I didn't use that one.
Okay, so how are we switching to that? The old, that's like the old.
You like the old style?
I do.
Okay, so that's that was the other thing that we want to bring up, is that when we send these out, the one on your template here, and you can see why I didn't use it, is because it's impossible to see. It's hard to tell, and that's the way it physically comes out, actually looking at it, is that way. So we've kind of, yeah, it looks like a Christmas tree, it does. So I think, as everyone like at least the way the old one were, some of you might not have seen the new stuff, so it's not a big deal. But the old stuff was kind of easier to see, and it's something that can be dropped into each one of those. Is that, you guys good with that, or you guys?
Yeah, I like the old style because just finding like what the message text would be, you have to like click into it and then you have to read it on other.
So does your system have that, the old stuff?
No,
It doesn't.
we switched to this, but I still have access to the old Java program.
Yeah.
When I go look for alarms, I use
The old one?
versus this, because even acknowledging alarms on this is super slow.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just seems like it bogs it down.
So that's the feedback we're trying to get from it. We're trying to find out if anyone likes, because I've not found anyone who likes the old alarming system. It is hard to tell.
So in some of the graphics, so you had the kilowatt, that was being used, active kilowatts or something like that. I think it was on one of them.
Yeah.
And I saw you had on your packet, network at a Veris PM, I suppose, power module?
Yep.
So is that going into a controller, or is it?
Yep, well, it's the power meter that is back then.
Back, okay.
Yeah, instead of, typically you'll see power meters Modbus, and we're tied in the main distribution gear. These actual ones are back then, and they're actually they're slick because we don't have to do anything special with them, we just clamp them on and we're done.
Looks pretty nice, too.
Yeah, it works pretty good. Now, one thing on the graphics too I didn't mention, because it's not on a lot of them, is you'll see, I call them hamburger stacks, and Ryan told me they're bad and cold actually, so I'm right with that. If you click on that, that'll take you into a piece of equipment. So anytime you're looking at like an air handler, and you'll see that it shows the hot water, chilled water temperature, and I'll pull up another jar to show you, it launches you to another graphic that's associated with that. So anytime you see any of these values here, it means it launches you to another graphic associated with it. I'll pull up another school that has an air handler, and it'll launch you to the central plant so you can see what piece of equipment is serving that air handler.
How much do those cost, do you know?
What's that?
Those Veris.
Do you know? I'm the worst person to ask. Hey, Joe, do you know how much the back-end power monitors cost?
I mean, installed, you're probably looking at, 2-3 grand, something like that.
With the graphics and everything?
Yeah.
And everything put on their power meter, all the meters.
We'd be happy to price it up.
So this would be a report, like right here, when we were talking about sending reports out, this would be one that we would send out, like,
Looks like a regular
every
CT.
month, and it shows you.
What's that?
Or every week it shows you,
Back net.
or even actually every day, it shows you the highest demand, the lowest.
It's coming off the main gear, you gotta get,
And
the
this
big
is
thing
what
is
we were
installed,
really
you gotta get
starting
in
to
there.
send reports out on these
So we use
systems, is to be able to give you.
smaller equipment.
If you're getting with peak,
Just
just
through
energy
PLCs.
demand costs or stuff like that, it gives you a graph measurement just like this. And that report would spit out to look exactly like this, and you'd have all that information on there, and it's just a time stamp that goes in there, and then every Monday, it gives you that, and then it resets, and it starts the whole week over and does that. So, pretty cool thing on that, where it gives you that ability.
So you could basically do the same thing if you had any controller that had analog input,
Let's see if I can do something.
which some of your controllers do.
They all see.
Yeah.
It's not.
My phone said that too when I went on the demo site.
So the only reason I pulled this one up, I want to show you a little bit different, is that when we were talking about when we did the launching from equipment that serves it, so you can see right here, we're running on a heat pump system, And on that heat pump system, you can see we have obviously a geothermal system that is attached with that, right? So when you see any of these connections right here, it gives you the ability to, one is we'll always have the source state and temp. So usually this would be like a chiller or a boiler system that's attached with that link on there. What we'll always try to have is the source state, the temperature. Source tells us it's on. What's our source temperature? 57 degrees, and our pressure. We have, so it tells us everything is within the ranges. We were talking before about loop temperatures. You know, if we looked at this source temp and our loop temperature was 100 degrees and our heat pump's locked out, we can immediately correlate that source temperature is causing the heat pump on the lockouts. But we put these on here so you have the ability to be able to diagnose and say, okay, what my heat pump is doing what it's supposed to, what other thing is out of the ordinary, and we can look back and say if our loop temperature was 100 degrees and our heat pump was locked out, the next logical thing we have to do is jump to our heat source and see what was causing the problem. So all of your equipment that you'll have on there will have that ability to be able to jump to the piece of equipment that's serving it. So a boiler will have a jump tag from an air handling unit, and if it were failing on the boiler side of it, you'll be able to jump to that from there. So you can see right here, we were immediately able to jump in that area, and we can actually then start going into diagnostics of what's going on with that piece of equipment. We're built for you guys. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We wanted to make it so it's serviceable. I want to immediately find out what my problem is. I take it from the piece of equipment, I go to the next piece of equipment, I go to the next piece of equipment. So we're built for you guys to be able to do logical troubleshooting of the systems and find out what's going on. Which one? Yeah, if you just click on that, that'll area you right back. This is no really different than the one that I before. I just wanted to show you
my
that.
background.
We didn't have a lot of
Not leaving my background, I'll have all the
you can see what's going on.
And as I'm flipping in and out of stuff, my eyes will just pick up that color change.
Yeah.
Any questions on the graphics, the envisions and stuff like that? I'll show you a little bit of the programming and stuff like that we were in, and then you're pretty much free to go unless you guys want to sit back and I can go over everything you guys have on your system. You can do that, all right? So let me go into.
You gonna go buy a snow shovel for your ride home?
So to make any edit changes, we can go back here, right back to the mode, and we go to edit. And reload. Who did graphics and stuff like this in AH before? Any of you? Huh? R2? Same, pretty similar scenario. I want to just show you the difference between doing all these. It's night and day difference. So you can really start to move on these things. Because yeah, you remember the old R2 days where it was brutal. But you at least know how to do it, right? So Site Navigator, Site Manager. This is the way our system is going to look. This is the flavor it's going to get when we go from graphic to graphic to graphic. You can click between styles. You can have as many as you want on here. It doesn't really matter. It just gives you a different color. This actually goes to this tag. You can see we have Woodman. When we create your sites, we would have, Clay County would have its own based on, and a lot of our looks, some of you might like, geez, where did you get these colors from? They're your websites, okay? So I'll just give you that right up front, is that whatever your website looks like is probably what your system background is going to look like. We mirror them off that way. So we've got the Style Manager, pretty cut right there. You can make any changes on that. You can take things out by just clicking the edit mode. You can go in there, you can change the header, we can change the color to whatever you want. So in the edit mode, you can do all those changes. Change the look out of the tree and everything like that. I'm not gonna change anything because I'll be pissed. So we'll go, the next one is the navigation builder. So the navigation builder is essentially what we're doing is we're building this tree over here. So, where we were saying, this is where we can make all the changes. If I don't like where this is one, is that I can go up, down, I can move these around. So this is how our tree actually is gonna look. What's that? Rename. So we can go in here, edit, and I can take RTU3 out of there and I can rename it. So this is where Jason put you into? On the graphics? Yep. So once you're in here, you can make all the changes you want. Like I say, this dot. So R2 and AX, right, you had to follow the naming convention that you have the controller set up for. And this system, remember, this is software that is just laid on top of the network manager or the boss. It's just software, so it doesn't write to your points, it just gives you, you're sucking the value out of it and you're renaming it to whatever you want. So you can do any renaming on these and it's not gonna affect the point level down below at all. So that's one thing that's.
Now, if we change like the name there, is it gonna change on the floor plan too, or not?
Yep, you're doing everything through everything you change here is all graphic stuff.
Sweet.
It has nothing to do with the N4 or any of that, so that's, you gotta kind of keep those distinctions between the two different softwares. This software that we're going here is strictly graphic, it doesn't care what's going on.
So like, we do rename stuff, like, we've got like, one area will be listed as like mechanical 38C.
Yep.
So we should probably leave that in there, but maybe if we wanted to like, actually put like a room name, like,
A hyphen beside it.
Yeah. You can put whatever you want in there.
so we can put like a D, but maybe leave what's in there so that it matches up to what's on the controller.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that make it so, because remember, you're not the only one that's looking at the system, so always make it so that if I'm into the N4 side of it or the programming side of it, I want to be able to match the two that I'm working on.
Make it simpler.
Yes. If you can see, here's the different type of templates that are on there, so by having these templates, I can go in there and I can take away or add anything we want in the templates at that point. So RIP.P4, you can see that there's nothing added on there. I can go in there and add, I can just duplicate this and add a RIP.P4 alarm block and direct it to RIP.P4. And then I would just see, you can see I'm dragging it in there. I can set it above it, below it, or I want it to fall underneath that. Put it right in the middle. Click. Where am I looking at it from? I'm going to go to drivers. And again, I'm in a little bit of programming, so just bear with me. I'm just showing you how everything's at. So I don't be like, holy crap, I walked there, thinks I'm going to program this thing. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just trying to show you. You direct it to the piece of equipment you're looking at. So I want it to all be under RT4. You click add, and you can see now, it just gave me a drop down right underneath there to be able to add that alarm line. And so the abodes, I can add alarm schedules, any of the key components we were talking about before. When you were saying, someone was saying, I don't want someone to have the alarms, or I don't even want them to see the schedules. You could take any of these out of here. Any of these values can just be easily removed and taken out of here, or you can add them. These are the default, like the alarm console, this is the alarm schedule page. So all that stuff can be added or removed at any point. So then the next thing we go to is, now that we got our navigation page, this is where we put all of our stuff on the palette, right? This is where we start filling the palette on and where we're going to go to. Next is we go to the page in Data Creator. And so now this is where we change graphics and everything like that. There's nothing on here now, right? I have to be able to pick a picture to be able to go on there. So let me grab this picture. Wait, let me go to 4 because he told me not to mess with it. But he said go to 4 only, since it's a fake one. So we were kind of jumping back and forth right on the other page, but I can do it from right out here when I first come into. I'm going to click on that. And the first one that we go into is going to be layout. And layout is essentially just the size of the screen that we're putting in there. I don't have anything to do with it. My equipment is what do I want to add for equipment in here. So I can easily go in here, and let's say I want to add another damper. So I can hover over that, over here, and just add a damper. So I've done that part of it. Now I can go in here and see this chain on here. I can add the value. I want to just, let's just say, I can put it in with it, but let's just say I want to add even. You just bring that with it and drag it on there, and that's it. That links the graphic to create it. If I want to see what's in here, all I have to do is go here, go edit properties, and you can see no target to that value, so I can actually bring in, I can bring that, there you go. Now I've just added a value to turn that, open and close that damper. It's really easy to do the graphics compared to what we were used to, where you had to do a link and bind and all that stuff. Now, you just drop it on the page, So what's controlling this fan? Let's see. So we can add or, and I can add any values on there. So you were talking before, let me go here to the digits. Now we were talking about before, what if I want to add like the temperature or anything like that to it? You go over here into the call outs. And some of this, like I said, this is things you need to know kind of where they're at, but. Sorry, hold on. Yep, drop that in there, and then I can just drag the outdoor temperature right on that. There you go. Yeah, maybe go around. Let's go. Let's go with, yeah, let's go with that one. Let's go. Node call out, let's take it from, I can go into data, and I don't have to only go to that block, I can go over here into services, or let's go to drivers, back here, and I wanna go to, what the, you know, and just drag on it. There you go. So bringing things in and out is very easy to do.
So what about like a floor plan?
Yep, so we'll go to that one next. So I'm gonna hit viewer. So I'm done in there. I've added the temperature I want, everything like that, right? So now I just go to the viewer. It's gonna ask you to save. I can save without closing, or I can save and close. Make sure you always set this one because I've done a lot of graphics lately where I've actually just been stupidly clicking this, and I have to redo them every time. But for this, I don't want to mess it up, so we'll go with that. So you can see right here, we're right back into that viewer page. The viewer page is just what is going on right now. I don't have any, this is what it looks like for you when you're on there. This is like, oh yeah, it looks good. Now we click back into the paging data creator. And if we click right here again, remember, you're going to be going on the map portion of the data. You can see right there, now we're on the values. And so like, you've got to be able to click, so zones. Zones would be for if we're, you can see that I can go in here and I can edit vortex and I can change these around, or like I can go change those off to make that gradient level. So when we were seeing like our values in there, you can go in there and change that vortex. I can add another vortex onto there to make the changes in it. I can change this around here. And I see what he's trying to do here. I go, so that gives me the ability to change the zone. Now I go to the widget and I can go over here and say, okay, edit property. And I can go in here and then change any of these values. I can add any values we want to at that point. I can change. Go to the lighting, you can go in there and change any one of the lighting vortexes, anything you want to do in that one.
So what if you wanted to add a room number?
Okay, so we can go in. So then we go in here, we go to the call outs. We go back here to, which means we want to go in here to call outs. Let's just say I want to just add that. Right? Go to data. And I pulled in from where I want it to go to. Drivers. This is pulled out for Ritz at that one. Towards the bottom of it. There you go. And then I can I can shorten it up and make it.
But what if you just want to put a phone number in there?
Yeah, just type it in. Then you can just do a plain text.
Oh, okay, fine.
And then I can rename it to whatever you want after this new lecture. Head properties. And then whatever my display text is, either in bring back remembers.
Yeah, bring back.
And then we expand it wherever we want. So now when I go to my view, save and close. There's my room. If I was to drag it over a room, it'd be on a room. There's my one value I put in it for my text and stuff like that, for my space. So bringing any of that stuff's in really easy once you start understanding where it needs to go. And you can add in those remembers, take her in, go away and stuff like that. So one other thing I'll show you while we're in there is just, well, you can also, it's not just equipment, so I can actually go in here in the trends too. And I can go in here and make changes to the trends as well. So if I wanted to go here and edit properties, oops, I know what it is. Edit properties. I can go in there and you can see I have like these heating, cooling set points. I can change all these names then to different values too. So my bottom bar looks differently than it normally does. So you can go in there and change all of history. You can change the looks of all of them. Try any of that aspect of it. So, and then we go back to viewer and that's everything. That's essentially all I got. Is there anything else you guys wanted me to be able to hit on that I didn't hit on, or? I know some of it we get into like the programming side and some of you are like, which is why we put it towards the end, but. Yeah. So is there any, if you guys got any questions, I mean, otherwise I'm done with class and you guys are free to go, but if there's something you want to stay back or I can answer any other questions you guys have.
Good, thank you.
You bet. Thank you. And I know how to change those ones for you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hang out, but